Chapter 11:12. Destroy. Chapter 11:12. Destroy, _. The northern territory of the ancient continent was filled with continuous glaciers. It looked like a sharp ice sword jutting into the sky with a freezing aura. A group of more than 20 members of the God Clan was moving. It was led by a young man, sauntering through the glaciers towards the territory of swamps. The leading young man had short hair, which looked like short but sharp steel needles. A handsome face accompanied by a set of exquisite armor. His armor had the drawings of burning fires. More than 20 god warriors following him had calm auras and resolute eyes. They were like imposing mountains with abundant exploding energy that gave people a heavy pressure. The glaciers situated one after another had buried many warriors under those people's raids. After less than 5 years, they had uprooted the so-called talented seeds of the great star areas in this territory of bitter coldness. Young master, we can cross the glacier within 3 days to get into the territory of swamps where Mia and the others are, said a stiff-faced old man wearing a beautiful robe. Haig nodded, his line of sight shooting like a lightning strike forward. He said nonchalantly, Mia's team is useless. They're the slowest team, so they haven't finished cleaning their area yet. When young master gets there, we can finish it then. Peyton smiled and delivered compliments on time. He looked at the young man with respect. It has been tens of thousands of years, and the Bradley family was still the strongest family among the 12 families of the God Clan. They had authority in the Elder Committee, and this Haig was the most outstanding star of the Bradley family. He was young, but he was already at third sky of ethereal god realm. He was just one step away from incipient god realm. He got the origin of their ancestral star with years of experience in combat. His merits made people admire him. With his various personal experience, he could command the corps or train soldiers. This man had a will of steel that assisted his brutal and heartless deeds. In the eyes of the God Clan's elders, Haig didn't have a significant weakness. He was deemed the future leader of the Bradley family. The chief of the Bradley family could control almost everything in the God Clan or the master of the cosmos. They had nurtured Haig this way, though. Until now, he had never let them down. The operation in the ancient continent called Desolate was proposed by Haig. He also proposed himself to be the leader. The God Clan had spread the guiding fruits to the star areas that were the threats to the God Clan. They had revealed mysteries of the ancient continent, which had attracted strong forces sending their powerful successors to the ancient continent. Then, Haig led the elite generations of the God Clan's families to join this operation of destroying the futures of the other star areas at once. This heartless, malicious plan had shocked the elders of the God Clan. They had to give him applause. Many experts whose names were recorded in the Book of God the God Clan wanted Haig to be the future leader of the God Clan. This operation, where he took the outstanding young warriors of the families of the God Clan to the ancient continent, was the last challenge for him. If he could carry out his plan successfully to eradicate all the geniuses and the future of the other star areas, he would claim the throne of the chief of the God Clan in the future without any objection. Before Haig came here, he had written a military pledge, which ensured his success in this operation. He was full of confidence. Because before he had entered the ancient continent, he had a chance to break through to incipient god realm, but he forcefully held it back and remained in ethereal god realm so he could be eligible to enter the strange planet. Since he had the origin of their ancestral star, he could ignore the shackles of the ancient continent to use his soul consciousness and find the creatures hiding in any corner. With the elite force of the Bradley family at peak of ethereal god realm and the special advantage of using the soul consciousness, the victory belonged to him. Peyton smiled at him as if he had seen the future of the Bradley family in him or picture the beautiful image of the God Clan ruling over the cosmos. He felt proud of his family and, of course, of Haig. Remember one thing, our goal is to clear all the talented seeds of the other star areas. Haig arched his brows and said, it's what the elders have expected us to do. We must achieve it first before we figure out how to gain the biggest benefits for our families. You have to know which are significant missions and which are minor. We can't have internal issues before we've finished the main missions. I understand, Master, Peyton smiled. Yeah, get going. We should reach the swamp early. Haig nodded. Besides our territory, the other three still have some small problems. Just consider that we're going to help them extinguish the fire. It's not for them, but for us. Young master, I'm glad you have prioritized the whole picture, Peyton admired. The experts of the Bradley family continued to cross the glacier and approached Mia. A group of god warriors silently scattered in an area of slippery mud. They were approaching in a direction. The tips of Mia's feet touched the wet ground of the swarm slightly, floating up like a feather. She didn't say anything but continued to give gestures to make people scatter and expand their encirclement. Yuman gracefully led in the front to show them directions. All of a sudden, the hissing of tearing air arose from a distance ahead. Mia's face changed slightly. She called out for her warriors to halt. Shortly after, Baihao's team of 4 tiptoed and gathered by Mia. Baihao shook his head and explained begrudgingly. They had left before we came. Mia's bold brows furrowed as she spoke indifferently. Forget it. We should focus on the main targets first. We'll get back to that small fish later. Baihao bowed to her and showed his apology. Waving her hand, Mia winked at Phelps and asked them to move. 27 god warriors were arranged in half a circle formation. They moved further. Their targets were within reach now. If someone could hover in the sky, he would be able to see that Mia and Phelps were about to cast the net to catch fish. Their net was expanding and getting closer to Mofo, Shang Yingyu, and Wu Feng. Mofo and the others were the fish, but they didn't know that and moved at their regular speed. They hadn't recognized the threat. Between the two teams were dirty streams that were narrow and meandering like snakes. Inside one of those streams was a ghostly figure whose clothes were so clean that it was as if they weren't affected by the dirty water. He grinned and looked at Mia and Phelps. Then, he looked at Mofo and Shang Yingyu, who hadn't recognized the coming danger. He squinted and gazed at Xia Zhao, who was walking in the back of the formation. The sea of stars in his eyes changed. The starlight in his body suddenly condensed into a starlight bow and an arrow in front of him. A shooting star moved like a rainbow, bringing the brutal, tearing power that could rip the sky off. Magnificent starlight bloomed in the horizon and flew with the trajectories of the stars that had connected the thick earth and heaven energy to the starlight arrow. That starlight arrow became terrifyingly sharp and it thrust in Xia Zhao's back. The mournful whistle tore the air. Xia Zhao's face chilled within seconds. He couldn't help but spurt out blood. The life goo insects in his blood wiggled, hissing and buzzing. They immediately aligned into the malicious formation of demonic insects that had to strenuously struggle to stop that starlight arrow. A flow of destructive energy diffused. Countless starlight dots shot rapidly. Some of them exploded right at the area where the God Clan's warriors were hiding. Many of the God Clan's warriors had to urge their powers to stop the starlight or to move away. That despicable little brat! Xia Zhao shouted angrily. Mofo and Cecilia had to turn their head to watch Xia Zhao. They also saw the commotions in a distance that the God Clan's warriors caused when they changed their locations. They're here! Cecilia couldn't help but shout. For the time being, 11 fish including Xia Zhao accumulated their energy to the utmost. Just like the light arrows, they accelerated dozens of times faster and dashed forward. At the gathering point of the God Clan's members, Mia's charming face was as cold as frost. She hissed, "Get them immediately." Her line of sight was like an icicle drilling in a stream in front of her. She gritted her teeth in anger. When the starlight arrow was shooting away, she had recognized who had interfered with her business. It was the brat who had snatched the brilliant star fruit tree from her. Throughout these recent 5 years, they had moved around the swamp area and killed a lot of warriors to collect materials, but until now, she hadn't gotten anything more precious than the brilliant star fruit tree. The brilliant star fruit tree was robbed, which left a grudge in her mind. She could not forgive herself. A kid at first sky of ethereal god realm had tricked her with his powers Upanishad. He had taken the brilliant star fruit tree right in front of her, leaving her some mocking and provoking words. Each time she recalled this, she was so bitter that she clenched her jaw. It was the only mistake she had had since she had arrived in the ancient continent. She would never forget it. This time, her team had planned for a long time to kill the remaining warriors before Haig's team arrived. However, right at the critical moment, the starlight had pointed their positions and disturbed her plan in just a blink. As they couldn't form their attacking formation, their plan was destroyed. It was the second time. Mia took a deep breath. Her beautiful eyes twinkled with malicious thoughts. She hated Shiryen deep to her bone. After the God Clan's plan was interrupted, the God Warriors had to chase after the others furiously. Their formation was stretched. When Cecilia, Mo, and the others scattered, the God Clan's formation had to divide into smaller groups. When Mo, Cecilia, Shang Yu, and the others scattered, someone was going to be killed, but this kind of disbanding would save them from all being killed. As the God Warriors were chasing after the others, the warriors in the swamp area were scattering like lines diverging from the same source. One team was chasing after the other. And to the originator, the opportunity he was looking for had finally come. Chapter 11:13 Hidden Dragon Tying Sky. Chapter 11:13 Hidden Dragon Tying Sky, _ Members of the God Clan scattered to chase after the escapees. The outstanding warriors of different star areas ran disorderly. The lines of people started to leave further in the swamp from their starting point. Mofo, Wu Feng, and Cecilia would apply the same method when they were circled by the God Clan's warriors. However, they would gather to prevent being killed on the spot without having a chance to escape after that. When they faced the God Clan, they would split up and leave the attacking range of the God Clan first and then gather again later. In the swamp, the God Clan's team stretched and dispersed into small groups. Mia's face was cold as she stood still. Bai Hao and Phelps had gone to pursue the escapees. Yuman was busy giving directions of Mo Fo, Wu Feng, and the others to his clansmen, so they wouldn't need to search blindly. The shadows of the God Clan's clansmen passed Mia. She frowned and stood by a murky stream. Shiryen had stormed out of the stream and dispersed like glass shattering in just a moment. She knew that it was the ability of the space power Upanishad. She also knew that the warriors with space power Upanishad were the hardest target to capture. However, she didn't leave because she intuitively believed that Shiryen hadn't traveled a long distance. Not many people knew that besides the gravity power Upanishad, her attainment in mind power wasn't shallow. Sometimes her intuition was accurate. She also believed in her feelings. She could feel Shiryen hiding near here. Shortly after, there was no God Clan member nearby her. The Bai family's warriors had also gone. No one stayed to protect her, leaving her standing there alone. I'm curious as to why you could hide near here and Yuman didn't recognize it to remind me. It means that you can even deceive Yuman. You aren't ordinary. She pondered for a while and then smiled, her face glad and bright. Now, there are two of us here. Can we meet up to talk? Although she could feel Shiryen around here, she wasn't like Haig, who had fused with the origin of the ancient continent. Thus, she couldn't detect Shiryen's exact location. Mia's bright eyes had ripples of light. She smiled charmingly like a blooming rose. Her entire body emitted an aroma that enchanted people's mind and aroused any man. It made their heart beat faster and their blood boil. It was one kind of seductive mind control. Shiryen was hiding deep inside a stream. He had adjusted his heartbeat, breathing and controlling his blood flows to be slower. However, he felt like a cat was scratching his chest with soft paws upon hearing her lazy but delighting voice arose above his head. He even had some sexy hallucinations in his mind. Beautiful ladies with very little clothes were sticking their tongues out and licking their lips. Their eyes were dreamy and seductive while they were dangling their breathtaking bodies that showcased their beautiful and yet forbidden features. Those noble women appeared in his brain, occupying his soul and sea of consciousness and sinking his consciousness. They made him rouse his extreme desires. Although he didn't recognize it, his breathing became shorter and heavier. His eyes now had a naked hot light. Another version of him was fighting and trying to break his control to burst out. Gradually, he couldn't control it anymore. Abruptly, an extremely cold aura diffused from the poison-dipped cold bead. It was like sleet on a hot summer day. The dry and hot feelings in his mind were smashed instantly as cold expanded in his entire body. Shiryen pulled himself together. He hurried to stabilize his mind and adjust his condition. By the stream, Mia guffawed, her graceful body shaking. Her enchanting eyes scanned the area where Shuryen was hiding. She rose her 5 fingers and her terrifying power Upanishad exploded. The gravity of the stream where Shuryen was hiding changed. Shuryen was pushed up by a rigid force, shooting up into the sky. Boom! He emerged from the murky water current, flowing to the horizon. Found you. Mia licked her full lips. Her eyes suddenly became cold and vicious. She shouted, "Dare interfere with my business. Brat, you court death." A jade token flew out from her waist that had the carvings of 5-clawed silver dragons. The jade token shivered. 12 5-clawed silver dragons flew out from the token. There were 12 long iron chains tied on their horns that also jutted out of the palm-sized token. The 12 silver dragons were covered with delicate silver scales like shining pieces of silver. The 5-clawed silver dragons looked real and tangible, their auras wicked and lethal. With the jade token as the center, the 12 5-clawed silver dragons were roaring and screaming. They released their currents of silver energy that dyed the entire place silver. Boom, boom, boom. Explosions echoed in the void. 12 silver dragons roared and circled the token, continuing to release more silver energy. Shuryen was still pushed up by the stream under the silver dragons. His complexion changed. The invisible void seemed to be real. It had turned into a prison that normal people couldn't see. It kept him inside. Space seemed frozen. Do you think your space power Upanishad is invincible? Mia smiled gently, standing there gracefully. Unless you've reached first sky of incipient god realm, don't dream about tearing my divine formation, hidden dragon tying sky. I want to see how you fight against me. Mia was the daughter of the chief of the god clan's Fernandez family. Being one of the 12 great families of the god clan, the Fernandez family controlled several vast star areas with incredible natural resources. It wasn't difficult to use those precious earth and heaven products to force the divine weapons. The young generations of the core families all had powerful tools and weapons. As the chief's daughter, Mia definitely didn't lack good divine weapons. They had almost uprooted the Silver Dragon tribe and used 12 silver dragons to create the Imperial Dragon token. It could release the 12 confined 5-clawed silver dragons to arrange the hidden dragon tying sky. With her realm and the intensity of her god power, when she confined a first sky of incipient god realm expert, he would find it hard to get out. If Mia reached the incipient god realm and her god power advanced, the power of the Imperial Dragon token would be increased tremendously, making her more intimidating. The divine formation hidden dragon tying sky confined space. To the warriors cultivating space power Upanishad, it was like a prison. Unless they'd reached a profound level, it wouldn't be easy to get out. Since Mia was the owner of the Imperial Dragon token, the formation didn't affect her. She could get in or out as she pleased. She stood at her spot and pointed at the Imperial Dragon token. The long chains that tied the 12 silver dragons forcefully pulled all the dragons down. It also dragged the space confining Shuryen to the ground. Shuryen grimaced and looked at the 12 chains tying down the 12 giant silver dragons and the way they were struggling and roaring with empty eyes. He still remembered God-perishing land that led to Agate Star area. In that land, the God clan also used the same formation to chain the stone steels that could absorb blood and flesh from other warriors to recover the God clan's warriors hiding inside. That way, the dying warriors could recover quickly. Apparently, the divine formation hidden dragon tying sky by the 12 5-clawed silver dragons had the same principle with that evil formation. He couldn't help but remember the members of the Bloodthirsty's bloodline that used to be imprisoned there. You can't escape. As you're at first sky of ethereal god realm. No, you've reached second sky of ethereal god realm. Seems like you've refined my brilliant star fruit tree. While talking, Mia found that Shuryen's realm changed. Her face got colder. The brilliant star fruit tree was one of my goals. It would be the perfect gift for my coming nephew. It would help my nephew reach the incipient god realm without any danger. You've wasted the divine fruits. You've refined them all. You deserve 1,000 deaths. While talking, Mia entered the space where the hidden dragon tying sky was holding. She walked towards Shiryen step after step. Inside that strange space, the 12 giant silver dragons were dancing like 12 lightning strikes. Silver light sparkled and blinded people. Mia came, her eyes like a sharp icicle. She rose her hand and made a downward gesture, "You should die." The gravity increased rapidly like a 10,000-meter mountain pressing down. The terrifying pressure made Shiryen shiver uncontrollably. His bones sounded like explosions. The heavy pressure came like a massive ocean pouring on him. The space confining him squeaked as if it couldn't stand anymore. It was going to explode in any second. Mia wanted to use her power Upanishad to smash his bones and flesh to make him a messy, bloody pulp. Under such terrifying pressure, Shiryen bent as if someone was slowly pushing him down to the ground. The ground under his body exploded continually as it shattered like broken glass expanding from him. Countless cracks appeared, and each of those bottomless cracks elongated tens of thousands of meters. God Clan, haha, a member of the God Clan. His voice was hoarse as he grasped for his breath. Shiryen stooped, but he was laughing strangely. His laughter became louder, which was getting wilder and crazier. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The lean muscles were like hills or mountains on his entire body. They sounded like a big explosion. Veins bulged harshly under his skin and gave a feeling of something violently beautiful. SSSSS. A sharp thorn jutted out from his shoulder. Shortly after, his body changed dramatically. He then got the natural armor made of his skin, and so many sharp spikes were on his shoulders, elbows, knees, and even on the back of his hands. Blood boiled in his body like brutal cheerings. A massive murderous aura shot up into the sky. His eyes turned garnet like blood instantly, his face heartless and malicious. He faced the sky and laughed crazily. "Finally, I can fight a member of the God Clan." "So good!" Mia gawked, staring at his transformation. Within seconds, he had an earth-shaking change. She was baffled at first. Her soft body shook as she sobered and shouted, "Immortal Demon Clan." Chapter 11:14, Needlepoint vs. Spearhead. Chapter 11:14, Needlepoint vs. Spearhead, _ Mia looked at Shiryen, who was laughing wildly. She changed her countenance quickly. Her contemptuous eyes were now focused. She became cautious in just a blink. It was because Shiryen had transformed all of a sudden. Immortal Demon Clan. As she was a core member of the Fernandez family, Mia knew many secrets of the God Clan. In this vast cosmos, they deemed themselves as gods, as they were the nearly perfect warriors in the world. Their longevity was almost eternal. Their bodies were extremely robust. Their recovery speed was unimaginable, and their minds were transcendent in understanding different powers Upanishad. God Clan was a clan that had all the advantages of the great races. They had all the merits of the different races in their bodies. Besides the poor reproduction rate, they had almost no other weakness. The God members were arrogant and proud of their origin and their identities. They thought that no race in this world could be as perfect as they were. However, the 12 families of the God Clan, the great experts whose names were recorded in the Book of God, all knew that in this vast universe existed a clan with a small number of remaining members that wasn't weaker than them in any aspect. That clan was called Immortal Demon Clan. They were intimidatingly strong with extraordinary recovery ability. They were so powerful that they could transform like high-grade warriors of God Clan. The shape of a god warrior that had transformed was called the God Undying Body. At the same time, the immortal demon warriors could also turn into their demon immortal bodies. The shapes of them after transforming were surprisingly alike. With many similarities, many old god warriors had questioned whether the two clans could have something related back to their origins. It also made the god warriors nervous. They had always considered this race a significant threat and their archenemy. It had been millions of years since the Immortal Demon Clan had been fighting them. They had never paused to rest. Many years ago in the Great War between the Bloodthirsty Force and the God Clan, the Immortal Demon Clan was the core force. That war ended with the Bloodthirsty's defeat and the big loss of the Immortal Demon Clan. Afterward, God Clan had sent their best forces to chase and kill members of Immortal Demon Clan in every star area. They wanted to eradicate this race. Because of many similar features, the existence of this race had always made them bite their nails. A long, long time ago, a sage had investigated and announced a particular theory. He assumed that the God clan and the demon clan shared the same origin. The ancestral planet of the God clan was an ancient continent. At the dawn of this universe, 5 ancient continents were created at the same time. Ancient God Star was one of them. Until today, that star was still the most secret place of ancient God Star area. It was the holy land of the God clan and the Forbidden Land. Only the greatest warriors were allowed to visit that star. The solemn rituals and ceremonies of the God clan were held there. Ancient God Star was the homeland, the cradle of the God clan, and one of the 5 ancient continents of this universe. According to that sage, the immortal demon clan was born in another ancient continent called Ancient Demon Star. Ancient Demon Star and Ancient God Star were 2 stars of a binary star. They had many things in common. As they were both ancient continents of the universe, Ancient God Continent and Ancient Demon Continent were surprisingly similar, as if they were twins. They had given birth to the God Clan and Immortal Demon Clan. They both had God blood and demon blood respectively. They could transform and their reproduction rate was low. The 2 comparable races had been fighting against each other for billions of years ago. A long, long time ago, the God Clan and Immortal Demon Clan were the strongest forces in this cosmos. However, rumors said that the Immortal Demon Clan had declined for a long time. Not only were its clansmen massacred, but no one knew where Ancient Demon Star was. Many people assumed that God Clan had also smashed that planet. No one had seen it ever since. After their disastrous defeat, members of the Immortal Demon Clan moved to other star areas to survive and recovered their power. Later on, the Immortal Demon Clan was still the core members of the great operations of destroying the God Clan. They were still aiming at uprooting the God Clan to take revenge for their clan. Before the bloodthirsty force had invaded Ancient God Star area, the God Clan had experienced dangers that had almost eradicated this race. The Immortal Demon Clan was the most intimidating force in such operations. However, after the defeat of the bloodthirsty force, the God Clan finally used all their powers to pursue and kill the Immortal Demon Clansmen. After years of this cleaning operation, the number of the remaining demon warriors was getting smaller and smaller. As Mia was the key disciple of the Fernandez family of the God Clan, she understood how terrifying the Immortal Demon Clan was compared to other clans. She knew how severe the damages that this clan had brought to the God Clan were. She had heard from her precursors that if this clan had been luckier, perhaps they would have been the overlords of this universe. Crack! 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 A chain of thought flickered in Mia's head. Her graceful body made cracking sounds as it was changing. The clothes on her slender, gentle body were suddenly shattered by some unknown forces. Transparent scales appeared on her skin like leaves growing on a tree. Those scales were somehow made of a dazzling crystal, which released a powerful energy fluctuation that nothing could break. Crystal spikes jutted out of her shoulders, elbows, knees, and the back of her hands. They looked like sharp icicles that made people respect and admire her. It was the God Undying body that only the pureblood God members could have. Once they could transform into the God Undying body, their powers and competence rocketed instantly. Seeing Shiryen transformed into his demon immortal body, Mia didn't have any gleam of disdain anymore. She had to focus on dealing with this big threat called Shiryen. Compared to Shiryen's shape, Mia looked much more beautiful. Her entire body was covered with crystal scales that clung to her body. They were fulgent like the most magnificent porcelain. However, those sharp spikes were like icicles that made people numb and gave them a sharp feeling. Shiryen's eyes were as red as blood. He looked brutal and wild, as if he had fallen into bedevilment. The natural armor on his body had cracks that revealed his lean muscles and red skin. The bone spikes that jutted out made people imagine something evil and wicked. After they had finished their transformation, Mia's eyes became placid, as if they didn't have emotions that humans should have. She looked curtly cold like a killing machine. Shiryen was different. His eyes looked like they were dripping blood, revealing his wild and ruthless intents. He seemed to utterly fall into the sea of blood. Desires occupied his mind, giving people a feeling of a crazy beast. We have only one policy to the members of the Immortal Demon Clan: kill every last one. Mia's voice was chilling to the bone. She didn't have a bit of emotion in her voice. One of her thorny, crystal hands pointed at Shiryen. Boom! The 1,000 times heavier gravity pressed down. Shiryen roared like a caged beast. Veins bulged and wiggled under his skin. They wriggled like worms, releasing the deadly energy into the sky with earth-shaking currents. The gravity field covering his body exploded in a reverberating way. Clusters of light that could destroy the planet shot out, shocking the 12 silver dragons. They were enraged, roaring and hissing by Shiryen with their claws held out as if they wanted to rip Shiryen apart. 12 five-clawed silver dragons had flowers bloom in their mouths. Those fresh flowers wiggled and bit the air like big buckets of blood. Dark prison demonic flowers, Shiryen said in a husky voice before bursting out laughing. While he was in the god-perishing land, he had known the dark prison demonic flower. He knew that it was a tool of the god clan that could devour blood, flesh, and essence chi to refill the god warriors. It was a peculiar and horrible creature in this world. However, those dark prison demonic flowers were afraid of the heaven flames the most. Well, you know a lot, said Mia indifferently. Seems like the Immortal Demon Clan and our clan are archenemies through generations. You know our deeds very clearly. Too bad that it can't change anything. The dark prison demonic flower hates only the top heating or the top yang things. Her pupils shrank. While she hadn't finished, clusters of red flames flew out of Shiryen's glabella, hitting each dark prison demonic flower. Sizzle! 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 The dark prison demonic flowers in the mouths of the 12 five-clawed silver dragons were burned down. They turned into ashes almost instantly. All the five-clawed silver dragons with chains used to have empty eyes without a clear focus. Suddenly, they began to struggle hard. They halted as they were heading towards Shiryen. They howled and aimed their attacks at Mia. The dark prison demonic flowers were the things that controlled the dragon minds. When the flowers were burned, the dragons got control of their bodies back. They hated the god clan to the bone. To Mia, the one who had imprisoned them for years as slaves, their hostility towards her was so deep. As soon as they woke up, they showed their fangs and attempted to kill Mia to free themselves from the Imperial Dragon token. At that moment, the space confinement caused by the hidden dragon tying sky was broken. Shiryen seized that chance immediately. Grinning fiendishly, he wasn't hurried to attack Mia. His body flashed and he disappeared from the attacking rage of the Imperial Dragon token. He wanted to make sure that he had enough room to attack or retreat. He didn't want to use his energy to withstand another confinement. Get lost! Mia shouted ear-piercingly when the 12 silver dragons approached her. The Imperial Dragon token suddenly had a powerful suction force. The 12 chains connecting to the dragon swung hard and retreated into the Jade token. The silver dragons roared and screeched unwillingly. They were pulled into the Imperial Dragon token, turning into 12 dragon drawings on the token. Everything quieted down. When Mia returned home, she would use the dark prison demonic flower to control their souls. Then, the Imperial Dragon token was good again. However, she couldn't use it for this battle anymore. Good. You fused with the heaven flames. No wonder why you weren't afraid of the dark prison demonic flower. Mia's face was strangely placid. She put aside the token, but she wasn't hurried to strike another attack. After you got rid of the hidden dragon tying sky, you could leave this place immediately with your space power Upanishad. Why are you staying? She knew clearly that without the Imperial Dragon token, she couldn't kill Shiryen, a warrior who cultivated space power Upanishad. Thus, she wasn't hurried to strike another attack. Chapter 11:15 Pressing Earth and Heaven's Prestige. Chapter 11:15 Pressing Earth and Heaven's Prestige _ Mia stood like an ice mountain in the middle of the marsh. She looked at Shiryen with cold eyes. I'm curious as to why you hid here. You could have left earlier. Do you have any plan? As her mind flickered, she started to chat with Shiryen. Shiryen looked like a volcano. His savage aura was thick and terrible, as if he had a mental problem that would burst out in any minute. Although both of them had transformed, Mia looked placid without a streak of human emotions. Shiryen was brutal and ferocious like an enraged beast. He was wearing his most extreme face. They were truly two different poles of the extremes. Only Shiryen knew that if he didn't use the third sky of Rampage, he couldn't consume the negative energy in his acupuncture points that would put him into a crazy state under the boiling demon blood. However, once he released his negative energy, he could sober up. While fighting Mia, he didn't use the negative energy or the death and life power Upanishad. He was trying to not use the abilities related to the features of the bloodthirsty bloodline. Shiryen knew that even if he used all of the skills, he couldn't kill Mia. At the same time, his identity would be revealed. And if Mia got his identity, she could put everything aside to gather all the members of the God clan here to kill him. It wasn't a situation he wanted to see. Thus, he didn't answer Mia's question. He rose one hand, his palm facing a flame floating above his head. The Kosol suddenly became the most dominating magnetic field with an extreme suction force. Shortly after, a thick cloud of earth and heaven energy above their head suddenly made a downpour that congregated on Shiryen's Kosol and looked like an ignis fatuus. It was tied down as if his Kosol had gripped it in hand. The unrivaled earth and heaven energy of the ancient continent was gathering like a stream of dense energy. Quietly, it transformed into a dazzling block of light like a falling sun that was aimed at Mia. Calm Mia changed her visage for the first time. A gleam of fright flashed in her eyes. That brilliant block of light had the energy of an area of 10 miles around. This planet was an ancient continent that had the most abundant earth and heaven energy in this universe. The amount of energy from 10 miles around could be compared to a suicidal attack of an incipient God realm expert. Even Mia couldn't bear it. The transparent scales on her entire body shivered. Rings of silver lights fluttered from her, merging with each other to create a rippling energy like the seawater. She put on an extremely exquisite mask, which looked pale and vicious. However, it had frightening energy. Peculiar drawings appeared on her mask. It looked like those fine lines were connecting with Mia's veins and releasing powerful energy that made her face emit silver light and send them to the silver light ringers around her. The energy surrounding her changed massively. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The chunk of energy like a small sun grumblingly pressed down, impacting upon countless silver light rings above Mia's head. The ear-splitting explosions reverberated. It was like this area was receiving a tremendous earthquake. The terrible energy storm expanded like a rising tide overflowing everywhere. It crushed all the grass, trees, and flowers, which stood in its way into powder. Even the hard stones were grounded. The area was destroyed under this attack. A massive pit covering the area of 10 miles around appeared, which looked bottomless. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Shadows headed towards their area. They had stopped their pursuit of Emofo's team because they were afraid something bad happened to Mia. Shiryen stood by the massive pit and used the Kosol to sense. He grimaced afterward. So powerful. Mia was safe and sound under that pressing earth and heaven prestige attack. Her soul and body didn't change much. She just received some scratches. Shiryen was terrified. He thought that under the situation that he didn't get into third sky of Rampage to use his negative energy, he wouldn't be better than Mia if he had to bear such a strike. That attack was the energy of the ancient continent that his Kosol had collected to create the sky's prestige. Only Shiryen, who had the same origin as the ancient continent, could gather the earth and heaven energy here to create the fatal attacks. However, Mia wasn't hurt. Sensing quietly for a while, Shiryen found that more experts were coming to this area. He pulled himself together and then left discreetly. As he cultivated space power Upanishad, as long as the space wasn't restricted, it was easy to leave. Before Yuman and the Fernandez family members arrived, he had disappeared. After several minutes, Yuman and Baihao's team came with worries. They were frightened as they looked at the deep hole. They all grimaced. Cough, cough. Mia's voice arose deep inside the hole. Shortly after, Mia slowly floated up. She had resumed her normal shape, wearing a beautiful dress from the god Undying Body. Her face reddened and she had a trickle of blood on the corner of her mouth. She didn't look tired, but the cold light flared from her eyes, which terrified people. "Young lady, what just happened?" asked you man with worries. "Who could create such a powerful attack? Who can be so strong as that?" Mia had a cold and harsh complexion. She frowned and contemplated. "He's strange. I doubt that." She paused midway. Perhaps it was because of the Bai family's warriors here, as she didn't want to let outsiders other than you man know this. She stopped her line and asked all of a sudden, "Did you get any harvest?" "When we heard the crazy commotion here, we hurried to get back. We haven't killed anyone, but Phelps and the Ascot family's warriors are hunting them down." "Perhaps they will kill some," said you man. "The woman who cultivates lighting and ice powers called Shanging Yu. Do you know where she is?" "Over there," you man pointed at a direction. Mia nodded and said, "Follow me there." She remembered the first time she saw Shuryen. He was together with Shanging Yu inside an invisible light cage. They had something ambiguous back there. She knew that it was hard to subdue him since she couldn't use the Imperial Dragon token anymore. In this case, to force Shuryen, she had only one method, capturing the one he cared about. Mia assumed that Shanging Yu was important to Shuryen. By a broken wooden club, starlight dots slowly gathered into Shuryen's body. He had resumed his body and then changed into a black warrior costume. Shuryen was frowning and thinking. Mia at Third Sky of Ethereal God Realm was a high-level warrior of the God Clan. She could change forms in just a blink. She was solid, and she also had a lot of divine weapons. It was almost impossible to take the 7-colored demonic flower from her. Although he used the negative energy and revealed his bloodthirsty bloodline, he wasn't so sure that he could defeat Mia. If he wanted to get the 7-colored demonic flower, he had to seize the chance when Mia was hurt or threaten her. Threaten her. His eyes brightened. He smiled after pondering for a while. He left quickly afterward. Shuryen and Mia had thought of the same location. A group of 4 warriors was moving fast in the swamp area. They looked like 4 lightning strikes. Not far behind them were the members of the Ascot family who were striking their targets with different energy attacks. They had struck the swamp along the way, creating ditches and smashing any obstacles that were standing in their way. Cecilia and Shanging Yu were leading. God power was rolling in their bodies. They wanted to get rid of those chasers and regroup with Mo and Wu Feng. Suddenly, Cecilia and Shanging Yu were shaken. They halted and looked to the area ahead with a dark visage. The void in front of them had layers of invisible energy barriers that blocked the way. Those barriers were tenacious and flexible like cotton clouds. When they stepped inside, they couldn't struggle to get out of there. When the 2 of them stopped, 3 shadows emerged from the void in front of them. The leader of that group was Phelps of the Ascot family. Phelps smiled tenderly and said, "Hey sisters, don't go. We can chat a little bit." While Phelps was talking, the 2 Ascot warriors were building barriers behind him and expanding their coverage. 5 other Ascot warriors appeared behind Cecilia and Shanging Yu. They dispersed, approaching and circling the 2 women. All smiled and bowed at Phelps. "Young master, how do you want to play with them?" "Kill the other 2 first," Phelps ordered deliberately. Some warriors of the Ascot family jumped over like hungry tigers. They glared at the 2 poor warriors accompanying Cecilia and Shanging Yu. Different energy attacks and divine weapons bombarded, their lights covering the 2 of them. Broken starlight congregated. Shuryen reappeared. Squinting, he looked at the layers of energy barriers in front of him. The warriors of the Ascot family had set up the energy barriers carrying the power of 5 elements. Perhaps even a First Sky of incipient God Realm couldn't break them. Shuryen could see the figures of Shanging Yu, Cecilia, and Phelps under those barriers. The battle inside the barriers was so fierce. The 2 warriors whom he had met together with Mo were about to be killed. Their situation was fatal. Phelps was smiling tenderly and chatting with Cecilia and Shuryen while gazing at them. Shuryen grinned. His target, Phelps, was the crucial warrior of the Ascot family. He was also the leader of the Ascot team this time. He wanted to capture this man to exchange for the 7-colored demonic flower. Chapter 11:16. Break the Barrier. Chapter 11:16. Break the Barrier, _. Including Phelps, this troop of the Ascot family had 8 warriors. Besides Phelps, who was at a low realm, the rest of them were at third sky of ethereal god realm. They were all from the elite force of the Ascot family. Phelps was the second son of Chief Vic of the Ascot family. Vic favored the son a lot. For his safety during the operation in the ancient continent, Vic had used many good seeds at the ethereal god realm of their family. The 7 guards of Phelps were at third sky of ethereal god realm, and 2 of them could reach the incipient god realm soon. Vic had 3 sons, but the oldest one was just an ordinary warrior. He had just reached first sky of ethereal god realm. Vic's youngest son was still so small, so he couldn't use him. He didn't exert his efforts to nurture the son. Phelps was his second son, who was a prodigy. He had reached second sky of ethereal god realm when he was pretty young. He was much better than his big brother and, of course, smarter. He had helped the Ascot family claim a lot of territories, making the elders in his family happy. Vic had considered him the future of their family. Thus, in this operation on the ancient planet, he let Phelps take their experts to join and compete against the other families. What was a member of the Ascot family? At the peak of ethereal god realm, his mission in this operation was to take care of Phelps. He cultivated earth power Upanishad and was one of the warriors who could break through to the incipient god realm shortly. While the other 6 warriors of the Ascot family were joining hands to attack Cecilia, Shang Yingyu, Jiao Shan and Jiao Hai, what hadn't moved yet. He had stood behind Phelps to increase the power of the barriers and to protect Phelps from an ambush. A blue lightning strike shot out from his palm, entering layers of barriers behind him. After receiving a vibe sent back to his mind, what exhaled in relief. The barriers were complete. Unless it was an incipient god realm expert or some warriors with a special ability, no one could cross his barrier shortly. It was no problem to keep Cecilia, Shang Yingyu, Jiao Shan, and Jiao Hai away. What knew that Shang Yingyu and Cecilia were both powerful. Their real competence wasn't less than the incipient god realm experts. However, he believed that they couldn't break through to incipient god realm while fighting the others. Thus, he could ease his mind. Watt's long and narrow eyes were so cold as he gazed at Cecilia and Shang Yingyu. The corners of his mouth pulled into a perverted smile as he laughed. Shang Yingyu's body was slender and mesmerizing with perfect curves. She looked graceful while having lightning beams winding around her slim waist. Those lighting strikes made her look hotter. Cecilia was mature. Her sexy, plump body was like a ripe peach. Her pink skin looked like juice that could drip out of there in any moment. The 2 women were beautiful in different ways, but they were all able to drive men's desires. Watt glanced at Phelps, who was swallowing saliva. He frowned unrecognizably. He felt so begrudging. He knew Phelps's habits. This young master of the Ascot family didn't have a mother since he was a child. Vic had used bloody training courses to train him. When he was still a little boy, he had accepted assassination missions dozens of times. His father had used brutal tests to check his abilities. Perhaps because of this dark childhood, Phelps had an extreme personality. He was incomplete. Torturing beautiful women was his fetish. For so many years, he had killed almost 100 women from different races, including kids or mature women from different star areas. Watt had been serving and protecting Phelps for years. He was in charge of cleaning Phelps's mess too. He knew how pathetic those women were when their lives were taken. However, he could also enjoy something from Phelps. Besides Phelps, who crazily physically assaulted those women to death, Watt could also enjoy the victims' soft bodies as he was the closest watchdog. Looking at Shang Yingyu and Cecilia, who had totally different bearings, Watt's eyes became nakedly hot. He knew Shang Yingyu and Cecilia were the best of the best. Compared to the women they were much more outstanding. More importantly, the 2 women were at third sky of ethereal god realm, the same realm as his, which made him more excited. Recalling the wonderful feelings he used to have, his body became hot and dry, his eyes looking at Cecilia and Shang Yingyu more dissolute. Compared to him, there was someone giving people chillier eyes. It was Phelps. Phelps had gleams of green light in his eyes, which was a secret technique that he had practiced. Under his gaze, Cecilia and Shang Yingyu had a strange and fearful feeling of having someone peeling their clothes piece by piece. They even felt like there were two slippery green snakes crawling on their bare skin. They felt so frightened. Thus, the two of them couldn't perform their best powers in this battle. Phelps's and Watt's looks had brought them pressure that wasn't less than that from the incipient God Realm expert. They made the two women who loved to stay clean felt so irritated. Cecilia, Shang Yingyu, Jiao Shan, and Jiao Hai were circled by 6 warriors in an area of around 10 mu of land. However, those warriors were bombarding Jiao Shan and Jiao Hai with their fire, ice, malicious tornadoes, and grumbling tremors from the underground. Jiao Shan and Jiao Hai were attacked furiously. Their energy was drained quickly. They tried to get rid of the barriers. However, whenever they bounced back after hitting the barrier, the others had attacked them fiercer. They were bleeding terribly. Cecilia was like a slithering green water snake. When she rose her hands and lifted up her leg, her mind would control the crystal-clear streams and turn them into giant eagles, dragons, or pythons. She could control the water currents in different ways to defend or attack. Shang Yingyu's body made thunderclaps noises. Bow-like lightning strikes flew like flying dragons, filling this confined space. She swung the lightning rod in her hand powerfully. Every time her rod swung, it released a roaring electric dragon that created an earth-shaking commotion in this swamp area. However, they couldn't tear the energy barriers. Shang Yingyu had tried many times, and she found that only if she could clear her mind and accumulate energy for a while, she could use her divine weapon to strike with all her power once to break the barrier. Unfortunately, the others wouldn't give her time or room to urge her powers. Seeing that Jiao Shan and Jiao Hai were unable to hold it anymore and Cecilia was hasty, Shang Yingyu felt like her mind was a mess of tangled silk threads and her eyes got colder. Phelps and Watt had gazed at Shang Yingyu and Cecilia the entire time. This kind of naked look made her want to tear him apart. However, Phelps's venomous, snake-like look made her so agitated. It could affect her energy somehow. Perhaps we can't get out of here. Cecilia was still calm, but her eyes looked bitter and mournful. Since we can't get rid of it anyway, we'd rather have a deadly fight to take a few of them with us. She looked at Jiao Shan and Jiao Hai. 3 water ripples expanded from her while the murmuring sounds of water arose in her body. Right after that, her plump body looked thinner as if the water inside was drawn out a little bit. It happened that way though. Now, Cecilia had a water rope in her hands, which was around 5 or 6 meters with formidable 5-colored energy. Her body shriveled and the rope was drawn from her palms. The god warriors discolored as they saw the water rope. When Jiao Shan and Jiao Hai saw Cecilia drawing the water rope from her body, their faces became stern and brutal. Just like when the wild beasts facing death, they had to strike out with their strongest attacks. Blood oozed out from their pores. Shang Yingyu's cheeks showered her malignant intent when she saw Cecilia, Jiao Shan, and Jiao Hai prepare to strike with their best. She also urged her energy to use her secret ability. Although she didn't want it, she had no other option around. She understood that even if she used her last trick, she couldn't get out of here intact. However, if she didn't do anything, Cecilia, Jiao Shan, and Jiao Hai would be killed soon. If she didn't cooperate with them, they couldn't damage the Askets much. She didn't have a feeling for Cecilia, Jiao Shan, or Jiao Hai. They had grouped because of the God Clan's threat. They wanted to survive, which was their ultimate goal. In other given circumstances that didn't have the threat from God Clan, she perhaps would be the enemy of the other 3. They would fight and even kill each other for the benefits. But right here in this area, they were loyal comrades against Phelps's circle. They had to advance or retreat together. The opponents had pushed them into a dead end. Here comes the excellent performance. Phelps's body shivered in rhythm, his face enjoyed. He squinted and said, "Someone's going to die. I love to see people die the most. I've loved it since I was a little boy. From the first time I killed someone, I've loved such feelings." He seemed to immerse in his memories, his face delighted while a gleam of fearful malice sparkled in his eyes. On the day of his growing-up ceremony, Fick had arranged him a special ceremony alone, the bloodiest feast he had ever had and had never forgotten. Fick had let him massacre more than 10 warriors from different races. It was the biggest nightmare of his life, which had given him harshness and intimidation later. However, his mentality was distorted ever since. Phelps shivered and sank in his bloody memories. He seemed to see so many enemies that he had tortured to death and the women he had killed under his sadism. He became stirred up. What was also restlessly excited. His eyes were scorching hot while his private member was rising and pointing at Cecilia and Shang Yingyu. He licked his lips and pictured some fancy, soul-taking images. Swoosh! A vivid blood light cut through the sky, dyeing the horizon red like it was dipped into real blood. Since what was connected with his energy barriers and wasn't prepared, he was struck, facing the ground. Half of his body pierced into the ground. He screamed as if his bones were broken. Phelps was startled. He found that the barriers behind him were torn apart. At the same time, a feeling of extremely insecurity tingled his scalp. It was like a terrifying ghost shadow shading him all of a sudden. He seemed to return to his growing-up ceremony. His mind was filled with fears. He had a powerless feeling and had no strength to resist. Chapter 11:17 Hold Hostage. Chapter 11:17 Hold Hostage _ A dazzling blood-red light tore the sky. What a third sky of agate star area was walloped. He bared his teeth, crouching and convulsing on the ground. He couldn't support his body to stand up. What could build different and complicated energy barriers? He had a talent for learning and casting complex formations. However, everybody knew that whenever they wanted to build a strong barrier, the warrior had to send his soul into it. The stronger the barrier was, the more soul energy he had to contribute. Also, there was some kind of barrier that could interlink with the warrior. Once the barrier had any tiny change, the builder would know it instantly. Watt's attainment in casting barriers was high. The barriers or restrictions he made could interlink with his soul. When the barrier was torn, his soul also received the pain of having a sharp blade cutting through his soul. He got hurt instantaneously. When the barriers shattered, Cecilia and Shang Yingyu were shocked. The warriors of the Ascot family also recognized something wrong. In just a blink, everybody made their decision. Cecilia, Shang Yingyu, Jiao Shan, and Jiao Hai tried their best to get rid of the circle, while the Ascot family's warriors wanted to know what happened to their barriers first. When they saw what crouching and convulsing on the ground, they discolored and instinctively looked for Phelps to protect him. Before they had departed to the ancient continent, Fick, the chief of the Ascot family, had ordered them to protect Phelps. As what couldn't protect him, they automatically considered protecting him their priority, especially as they saw Phelps being strange. When the barriers were torn apart, Phelps' sea of consciousness had been filled with negative emotions, which had stirred up the weakness in his mind. He was taken aback to the moment he had experienced his growing-up ceremony. He was restlessly worried, indeed. Under the given circumstance, Phelps' consciousness was chaotic. His sensibility was weakened, and he couldn't use all of his powers. Swish! 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 3 white bone thorns ghostly emerged like lightning from nowhere. They thrust into Phelps' chest. "Young master, watch out!" Watt balled his body and shouted. He didn't mind his life and used his chest to shield the attack from the 3 bone thorns. At the same time, all the members of Ascot family stormed towards Phelps as if they were all crazy. They wanted to use their bodies to shield all the attacks. Then, they would slowly punish the attacker. Cecilia, Shang Yingyu, Jiao Shan, and Jiao Hai felt that their danger was lifted. The barriers were ripped apart and the warriors of the Ascot family didn't notice them. It was the best chance to run away. They exchanged looks. They could see the hesitation in each other's eyes. They hesitated as if they wanted to seize the chance and counterattack. "It's a rare chance," Shang Yingyu hissed. Lightning beams bombarded from her body. They were like dozens of lightning snakes attacking the Ascot family's warriors. Cecilia, Jiao Shan, and Jiao Hai were still hesitant. Seeing Shang Yingyu taking action, they didn't hesitate anymore and urged their energy. Their looks were all focused on the warriors of the Ascot family. They wanted to join hands to damage their opponents. Until this moment, the attacker hadn't shown up yet. Shang Yingyu didn't know who had aimed at the Ascot family. However, the four of them knew that without that attacker who had discreetly torn the barriers and drawn the attention of the Ascot family's warrior, they were going to be tortured to death. The Ascot family was one of the 12 families whose reputation was spread over in the vast universe. They all knew about Phelps's strange and wicked fetish, which was indeed nauseating to women. After they knew Phelps's identity, Cecilia and Shang Yingyu had made up their mind. They would rather die together than let themselves fall into Phelps's hand. They knew the results of the women who had fallen into Phelps's hands. Swoosh! A white bone thorn disappeared. The other two bone thorns pierced through the gaps between the Ascots as if they had eyes. They made a turn and reappeared behind Phelps. At the same time, a narrow space slit emerged behind Phelps. A shadow walked out like he had just torn a sheet of fabric. His hands held two white bone thorns stabbing into Phelps's back. Brilliant rainbow light rippled from Phelps in many layers. They were filled with marvelous thick energy and the powers of the 5 elements. The two bone thorns stabbed the multicolored halos as if they were thrusting into a sponge. They felt powerless and couldn't make sparks of power. Boom! An energy barrier that could confine people snatched over Shuryen. Shuryen felt as if his entire body was tied down. His actions became stagnant. Kid, you court death. What had a look as he grinned. His hands were making hand seals like a blooming lotus that was aimed at Shuryen. A flow of energy that could seal the soul flooded and generated in his soul altar. A strange, massive lotus appeared in Shuryen's sea of consciousness. That lotus was so big it had occupied all the room in his sea of consciousness, which make his soul consciousness ineffective. Bang, bang, bang. Burning lightning, sharp icicles, and a sand-yellow punch dashed from 3 different directions, hitting Shuryen's body. Shuryen was shaken hard. He felt his internal organs get displaced. His blood gushed out instantly. While his blood was splashing, Shuryen staggered, his face remaining unchanged except for a gleam of malicious, cunning intent. Puff! It was the scream when a blunt weapon stabbed into flesh. In the next moment, Phelps clutched his stomach and screeched crazily. A white bone thorn, which had disappeared before, stabbed Phelps in his stomach. Half of it was jutting out of his waist. The bone thorn had broken his blood vein. Blood streamed out from his stomach and waist. Phelps held the thorn with both hands, his face twisted in pain as if someone was pricking his flesh one piece after another. The bone thorn in his stomach was still moving. Kill him! Kill him! Quickly! Kill him! Both Phelps and What shouted. The 6 warriors of the Ascot family became wild, urging their energy to the acme. They attempted to deliver Shuryen to hell in one breath. They wanted to kill him in 1 second. Swoosh! 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 All of a sudden, the water-like earth and heaven energy of the ancient continent overflew like a rising tide, shielding Shuryen. While people were screaming in fear, Shuryen glanced at Phelps and gave a low-pitched shout. The thick wall created by earth and heaven energy burst like a seething sea, pushing people away like they were struck by a tornado. Each of them was spinning or falling. Cecilia and Shang Yingyu had frightened countenances. So did what? The Ascot family's warriors and even Phelps. While people were trying hard to steady their bodies, Shuryen's body glided in a strange curve. He appeared behind Phelps in a blind spot of people's vision. A blood light appeared. The brilliant halo like a rainbow protecting Phelps was smashed. Crack! Shuryen clutched Phelps's neck with one hand. Phelps's bones cracked. Shuryen grabbed the bone thorn with another hand and stabbed Phelps' heart. The sharp tip of the bone thorn had sunk into his flesh. Blood bled immediately. Quiet, Shuryen said coldly. The other warriors landed, trying to steady their bodies. What and the other warriors of the Ascot family halted, their eyes red. They all gazed at Shuryen, but none of them dared to act rashly. Cecilia, Shang Yingyu, Jiao Hai, and Jiao Shan were filled with surprise and inexplicable doubts. They all furrowed their brows and looked at him with fright. Phelps, the leader they had to protect, was ambushed and held hostage. Yan's series of attacks had dizzied them and made them shocked. They had a whole new understanding of him. Even Cecilia, a warrior who had looked down on him a lot, couldn't deny the fact that his deed was brutal, curt, and sharp to the point. She could never imagine Yan doing this. "What do you want?" Surprisingly, Phelps was calmer than anybody else. His 2 hands were busy covering the wounds in his stomach that were still bleeding. He gritted his teeth and didn't scream anymore. He just looked darkly ahead of him. "If you do anything to young Master Phelps, the Ascot family will not spare your life. No matter where you are, our experts will hunt you down. Whichever star area you stay in, you will die. There is no doubt." What looked like a hurt wolf. His small eyes were like razors shaving Yan's body. He talked slowly. "Well, if I'm not mistaken, Spot was a member of the Ascot family, right? I think you all know that he's dead now." Yan grinned, his face ferocious and malignant. "He died in my hands. Before he was killed, he also told me that he was a core member of your Ascot family. He also said that the Ascots would take revenge for him. I finished him anyway." Listening to him, Phelps and the other warriors of the Ascot family felt like they had just fallen into an ice chamber. Cecilia, Xiang Yingyu, Jiao Shan, and Jiao Hai were aghast. They looked at him as if they were looking at a monster. Spot was Sloane's son and Watt's cousin. He was also an outstanding warrior of the Ascot and was a prominent member. However, only the key members of the Ascot family knew about his death. The other families of the God clan didn't know this information. When Yan told them this, and Phelps had no doubt. They confirmed that he was the murderer. Because besides the murderer, no outsider could know this case. Phelps and the other warriors of the Ascot family quieted down. They were trying to figure out how to deal with all of these. Chapter 11:18. What does it matter to me? Chapter 11:18. What does it matter to me? A corner of the swamp. Yan was gripping Phelps's neck with one hand, and he was holding a sharp bone thorn with his other hand whose tip was sinking into Phelps' chest. Just a little push and Phelps' body is going to collapse. Another bone thorn was stirring Phelps' stomach. Although it brought him unimaginable pain, it wasn't enough to take his life. The body of many races had 3 deadly weak points, including the head, heart, and the vortex in their lower abdomen. The soul altar hiding in the head was where a warrior's soul dwelled. The whirlpool in his lower abdomen was the center of his energy. Once it was broken, the energy of his entire body would vanish quickly. He would become an ordinary warrior who couldn't withstand even a blow. The heart was the blood pump, the engine of the warrior's blood and flesh. If it was broken, that body couldn't live anymore. Yan had used the bloody sword to break the rainbow halo that protected Phelps. He was using one of his bone thorns to poke Phelps's heart, which prevented Phelps from transforming into his god-undying body. As soon as he had the slightest commotion, Yan could kill him easily. Phelps didn't dare to act rashly. And the warriors of the Ascot family suddenly quieted down. They didn't threaten him anymore. Their eyes were drilling into Yan with fear. That was a madman who's crazy of killing. Because he killed Spot. Spot was Sloane's son and Sloane was Fick's brother. Spot was also a key member of the Ascot family, whose position wasn't lower than Phelps. If he dared to kill Spot, why would he be afraid of killing Phelps? Cecilia, Xiang Yingyu, Jiao Shan, and Jiao Hai all had complicated complexions. As they watched Yan holding Phelps as a hostage and Phelps bleeding badly, they felt their hearts chilled. "I am asking to know your purpose." Although Phelps was being held hostage, he was so placid as if he had forgotten all the pain. He spoke slowly. "You keep me alive. You didn't kill me immediately. You must have some other intent. What do you want after all? You're the future leader of the Ascot family. You're still calm at this moment. I admire you, though." Yan nodded to from behind Phelps's head. "Can you contact Mia and ask her to come here?" Was surprised. "You capture our young master because of Mia? Did you capture the wrong one?" Yan grinned. The bone thorn that had stopped moving inside Phelps' stomach suddenly wiggled hard. Phelps balled his body as pain flooded his entire body. Veins bulged on his forehead. He paled as the beads of sweat rolled down his neck. Everybody felt horrible. They instinctively rubbed their abdomen as if they had a sharp weapon piercing through that soft spot of theirs. Yen didn't need to utter another word for Phelps to urge. What jolted up and screamed, "I'm going to notify her. Right now." What took out a sound stone, his face extremely grimaced. He lowered his voice and said to the sound stone. After a while, he put the sound stone away and said, "Mia is about to get here. She'll arrive shortly. What do you want?" "We can discuss before her arrival." Yen looked at him indifferently. The hand that was gripping Phelps's neck suddenly tightened. Phelps' neck bone made crack-crack sounds. He was so frightened, so he had to follow the force and sit down. Yen also kept his posture as he sat behind him. He closed his eyes halfway. Apparently, he didn't want to talk. What was bewildered? He frowned and winked at the other 6 warriors of the Ascot family. The 6 warriors didn't say anything. They just scattered and circled Yen. No one paid attention to Shang Yingyu and the others. The 4 people including Cecilia and Shang Yingyu were targets, but they had become the outsiders. Yen didn't mind them and neither did What. They stood there lonely and suddenly felt irritated. Cough. Cough. Cecilia smiled and moved her sexy body. She didn't have her former disdainful look as she was trying to earn Yan's favor by talking to him enthusiastically. "Little brother, do you need our cooperation? Just name it. We will advance or retreat together with you." Shang Yingyu, Jiao Hai, and Jiao Hai also looked at him with hope. Recently, when Mo Fo, Wu Feng, Wu Bai, and these women had fought Mia and Phelps, they had never gained the upper hand. Their temporary troop had lost a lot of their members. Most of the time, they had to run for their lives helter-skelter. This time, it was also the most critical moment, and they thought that they would perish in Phelps's raid. However, when they were about to lose their hope, someone had interrupted and held Phelps hostage. This was a kind of victory. A good turn that cheered up everybody. They felt like they had finally seen the dawn after a dark night. It was obvious that Yen had only second sky of ethereal god realm. He had appeared out of nowhere, tearing the barriers that they couldn't even scratch to escape. Yen had hit the important leader of the Ascot family and kept him hostage, which had overturned their cognition. All of a sudden, Cecilia, Jiao Hai, and Jiao Shan remembered what Shang Yingyu used to tell them. Yan's soul consciousness wasn't restricted on this ancient continent. Cecilia, Jiao Hai, and Jiao Shan's eyes brightened. They all looked at Yen with hope. They finally believed what Shang Yingyu had told them. They became restlessly excited. If it was so, with Yen as the eyes in the swamp area, could they escape this damn situation? Their eyes became hotter. Yen lifted his head, looking at them as he didn't understand. He said coldly, "Why are you still here? Mia will take her Fernandez family's experts here in any moment. If you don't leave now, will you stay here to court death?" Shang Yingyu, Cecilia, Jiao Hai, and Jiao Shan were baffled. "We have you here, don't we?" Cecilia smiled charmingly. Her curvy body swayed gently like a beautiful Nagini. Her mesmerizing eyes had light ripples. "You're holding Phelps, right? How could they dare to attack us?" "Haha, we were blind that way." "Oh, how do your lives matter to me?" Yen impolitely cut off Cecilia's touching speech. He looked at her with the look he used for the fools. "I cultivate space power, Upanishad. Once I'm done negotiating with Mia, I will tear the sky and leave. The hotshots of the Fernandez family and the Ascot family will all be here. Without me, they will use you guys to vent out. Understand?" Cecilia felt so chilled. Her beautiful eyes showered her fear. She smiled embarrassedly and reluctantly. "No. You won't bring us with you." Yen glanced at her with an awkward expression. Then, he closed his eyes and showed his indifferent face. Cecilia, Shang Yingyu, Jiao Hai, and Jiao Shan suddenly felt the ground also got cold. A cold current of fear twirled, throwing them into the harsh coldness. Their faces grimaced, their bodies stiff. "You're truly a heartless, despicable bastard." Shang Yingyu gritted her teeth. "I've wasted my flirting on you." Cecilia was enraged. "He neglects the whole situation. That brat just wants to make profits." Jiao Shan and Jiao Hai shouted indignantly. Shuryen looked calm and natural while the other four were scolding him. He didn't even bat an eye. He still kept his eyes closed and said faintly, "Don't blame me for not reminding you. Mia and the Fernandez family's warriors will arrive soon. You don't have much time. Let's go." Cecilia changed her visage. She knew Shuryen's magical sensibility. As the situation was good, she stopped cursing him and said to the others, "We'll find him to take revenge later." Cecilia and the others glared at him maliciously and then left. They disappeared like the 4 lightning strikes. What? And the Ascot family's warriors didn't mind them as they were busy watching Shuryen. They didn't even blink. Phelps had 2 trickles of blood on the corners of his mouth. The wound in his abdomen had stopped bleeding. However, the bone thorn still stayed inside his body. It didn't move anymore, so Phelps wouldn't bear the cracking pain. His face was dark and calm as he signaled Watt's team not to act rashly. They had to wait until Mia came. Watt's team received his signal. They calmed down, waiting for Mia and the experts of the Fernandez. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The hissing sounds came through the air. What? And Phelps's eyes brightened as they thought that it was Mia's team. They were happy. However, when Shuryen used his co-soul to sense, he couldn't help but curse the others for their stupidity. Cecilia, Shang Yu, Jiao Hai, and Jiao Shan had just left, and now they returned. They stopped at this area, their faces grim. Puff, puff, puff. Some shadows appeared from another direction. They were Mo, Wu Feng, Wu Bai, and Xia. They arrived all of a sudden, their face aghast. That asshole didn't give us the way. We went going the wrong direction. We encountered Mia. You're cold-blooded. Shang Yu looked at Shuryen, hissing through her gritted teeth. It's your bad luck. Shuryen sneered. Mofo, Wu Feng, and Wu Bai had just arrived. They were baffled as they looked at Shuryen, who was holding Phelps, and then at Phelps with his bleeding body. The bone thorn was stabbing into his chest near his heart. Everybody looked so frightened because they didn't have a clue of what was going in the swamp. I heard someone was looking for me. I also want to find someone. Oh, the people who should be here are all here. Seems like we can avoid a lot of trouble. Mia's lazy voice arose. She smiled and sauntered between the members of her Fernandez family like the stars surrounding the moon. It was like what she had said. People who had to be present here were all here. Chapter 11:19, A Move to Change All. Chapter 11:19, A Move to Change All, _ Suddenly, the key members of different forces all gathered in a corner of the swamp. The Fernandez family's warriors had chased after Mo and Wu Feng. Through the soundstone, Mo knew that Cecilia and Shang Yu were besieged, so they came to help the women. At the same time, the warriors of the Fernandez family had received Mia's order, so they came to capture Shang Yu. They met Mo by chance and pushed them into this area too. When Cecilia and Shang Yu left, they went the wrong way, which led them to the Fernandez family's warriors. Begrudgingly, they had to return to this area. For the time being, Mia, Phelps, Mo and Shang Yu were gathered in this corner of the swamp. What? And the members of the Ascot family were circling Shuryen. No one paid attention to Mo or Cecilia. They had to make Phelps condition their priority. Mia came in with her sweet and delicate voice, her face calm and relaxed. She glanced at Shuryen and then at Phelps, making an unrecognizable frown. Mofo, Wu Feng brothers, and Xia were gazing at Shuryen. They were bewildered and scared to see Shuryen holding Phelps as a hostage. Mia arrived. Can you tell us what you want? Phelps looked dark but still calm. Oh yeah, I'm here. What do you want after all? Mia calmly paced and stood in front of Phelps and Shuryen while smiling. Everybody looked at Shuryen. Mofo, Cecilia, and Shang Yu were solemn. They were trying to calculate things. I want this 7-colored demonic flower. I want to use this flower to exchange for Phelps. Is it a problem? Still holding Phelps, Shuryen asked calmly. The 7-colored demonic flower? Mia was surprised. She contemplated and frowned silently. Miss Mia, what bent his body slightly in respect. Looking at her, he begged, please. Phelps also exhaled in relief. He thought that his life was secured now. Although the 7-colored demonic flower was precious, it wasn't as precious as his life. Mia should know how to choose. Thus, Phelps wasn't tense or anxious. Mofo, Cecilia, and Wufeng were astounded, their faces awkward. Shiryen had done many things to attack the Ascot family and capture Phelps to create this mess. And it was all because of the 7-colored demonic flower, which made them confused. Only Xiangying could vaguely grasp something. She frowned and became more gingerly. Oh, that. I'm so sorry. I've used up this 7-colored demonic flower. I'm so sorry. Under people's gazing, Mia spread her white hands, her charming face regretful. She just sighed and shook her head with a forced smile. What in Phelps became dark and terrible. Miss Mia, are you kidding us? We've always been together. I have never seen you use the 7-colored demonic flower. You? What didn't finish? Phelps gazed at Mia, his eyes cold and dark. Mia Jia, you want me to be killed, don't you? Why would I want that? Mia forced a smile and continued to say sorry. She sighed. I did use it all. Who knew that this boy needed the 7-colored demonic flower? She paused for a while, her eyes suddenly brightening. Okay, give me more time. I will contact the others and ask if they have the 7-colored demonic flower. The God Clan had also sent troops to the other 3 territories of ice, forest, and sea. They were taking the upper hand. Haig had finished his clearance mission. Mia wanted to find the other 3 teams to ask for the flower. She was waiting for Shiryen's answer. You all know I cultivate space power Upanishad, Shiryen said in a normal tone. Throw out your fantasy sky rings. I will check them all. If you actually don't have the 7-colored demonic flower, I will consider your suggestion. What? And Phelps frowned at Mia. Mia had cold eyes. She snorted and sneered. My fantasy sky rings store a lot of items I've harvested here, not to mention my divine weapons. You think it's practical to let you check them out? Pfft. The bone thorn inside Phelps' abdomen stirred one round. The wound that had just sealed was broken again and was bleeding terribly. Phelps winced and balled his body like a shrimp in pain. Apparently, he felt so painful. Let me see or I will kill him. Shiryen chuckled. I think you still have the 7-colored demonic flower. You just don't care about whether Phelps is dead or alive. The life of a future leader of the Ascot family isn't worth a 7-colored demonic flower. Haha. That's how cheap the noble identity I thought he got is. Phelps, what, and the members of the Ascot all had dark and sinister faces upon hearing him. Some threw Shiryen a hateful look while others gazed at Mia's team hostilely. Mofo and Cecilia exchanged looks. They all saw fear in each other's eyes. When they looked at Shiryen again, they felt so chilled inwardly as they were helpless and frightened. This man was too wicked. The Fernandez family and the Ascot family had joined hands to swagger in this swamp territory and hunt down the warriors of different star areas. No force could resist them. Even when Mofo, Wufeng, Wubai joined hands, they could only run away and avoid facing them directly. They had used different methods, but they knew that they couldn't overturn this situation. They felt dispirited and their hands were tied. All of a sudden, Shiryen appeared with his brutal deed. In their opinions, this was a trick by Shiryen to divide the union of the Fernandez family and the Ascot family. He wanted to crack their ally, and they could even turn out to be the enemies. Once Mia and Phelps stood on the opposite sides, these 2 forces of the God Clan would attack each other. They wouldn't have time to deal with Mofo's group. Mofo's group could seize this chance and overturn the situation, breaking their topsy-turvy circumstances. Everybody's eyes brightened as they appraised Shiryen for his cunning deeds. They thought that this young man was indeed smart and wicked. Only Xiangying knew that Shiryen didn't plan anything. He just needed the 7-colored demonic flower the most. Her beautiful eyes rolled for a while. She suddenly thought of a good trick. She said coldly and clearly, Mia keeps the 7-colored demonic flower. I have a special method to recognize that. My father is Shangqin. He used to write a book of peculiar florists. I got the technique to identify them. She coldly pointed at the 3 fantasy sky ring on Mia's fingers. She sounded confident, indeed. The 7-colored demonic flower is in her fantasy sky ring. I'm 100% sure. Phelps and what showed their sinister faces. They looked at Mia but didn't say a thing. Under their exploring eyes, Mia frowned and said calmly, "I can't let him check my items." "You can say whatever dirty things you want. The 3 fantasy sky rings store all our harvest, my divine weapons, and many secrets." "Absolutely, I won't hand them to him." "Well, it's simple though." Cecilia talked tenderly. "You can show the items in your rings one by one. Then, we can see that you don't have the 7-colored demonic flower. Everybody will believe you." Lowly B****, TCH. "Who are you? Do you think you're qualified to talk here?" Mia snarled. "Oh, ha ha ha." Cecilia laughed charmingly, just pointed at Mia, and said no more. Everybody could see that Mia was startled when people started to point at her. "Mia Gia, I just want to ask you one question. You think that my life isn't worth 1 piece of 7-colored demonic flower, don't you?" Phelps held the bone thorn in his stomach with both hands and asked coldly. "I told you, it's not like that." Mia screamed, her face impatient. Shiryen loosened his grip on Phelps' neck. He sneered and whispered into Phelps's ear. "Seems like you have to use some special trick though. Well, for example, rob her." "I agree with you. As soon as I get the 7-colored demonic flower, I will let you go." Phelps nodded. Taking a deep breath, he spoke, his eyes closed. "What? Summon our family members. Help me. Invite the 7-colored demonic flower from Mia Gia. Perhaps Mia is forgetting that the experts of our family that come here this time will outnumber their family's experts." "Phelps, you're crazy. You dare to deal with me as the other has instigated you." Mia screamed. Phelps looked dark and cold. He closed his eyes and didn't utter a word. "I understand, young master." What didn't even look at Mia? He just took out the soundstone to call the warriors of the Ascot family wandering around to gather. "Young lady, you man of the Fernandez struggled and looked bitter. He bent his body and said to Mia, "I'm grateful for your favor. But you can't turn your back to Master Phelps just because you want to help my brother treat his soul-rotting aphis. Young lady, please give him this 7-colored demonic flower to free young Master Phelps." After that, Mofo, Shiryen, Phelps, What and the members of the Ascot family understood why Mia had to conceal the 7-colored demonic flower. "He's just a servant. How could he compare to my noble identity?" "Mia Gia, you should give me the demonic flower. Don't make things more complicated. Otherwise, when my men come, it's awkward to fight each other." Phelps opened his eyes slightly and said coldly, "He didn't consider you man's brother an equal life, his face heartless and arrogant." The Ascot family was much stronger than Mia's Fernandez family. Phelps believed that Mia didn't dare to have any dispute with him. Under Shiryen's instigation, he became strong again. "Young lady," you man's face was painful and reluctant. He begged Mia to stop. "Just like you, Uncle Yuku has taken care of me since I was young. To me, his life is much precious than Phelps." Mia took a deep breath and said through her gritted teeth, "Let's fight. I want to see the Ascot family's warriors make me hand over the 7-colored demonic flower." She was really enraged now. Chapter 11:20. Shed all pretense of cordiality. Chapter 11:20. Shed all pretense of cordiality, _. Hearing Mia, Yuman was so touched and his eyes were watery. All the warriors of the Fernandez family following Mia here weren't pressured, but strangely cheered up. When they dealt with the enemies, no matter how cold, despicable, or wicked Mia was, it wasn't a weakness of hers in their opinion. It was the personal competence of a leader. If this leader had treated her subordinates well with care and respect, each of her soldiers would try their best to serve her. He would even dedicate his life to her. Apparently, what Mia said had touched her soldiers and stirred up their fighting will. Quite the contrary, Phelps' visage became darker and darker. He didn't talk anymore and just nodded to What held the soundstone and continued to contact the members of the Ascot family. Shortly after, experts of the Ascot family around had gathered. People could hear the loud noise of tearing wind when they dashed through the air. Shiryen still held Phelps calmly. He just sat there and squinted to watch the situation, waiting for the Ascot warriors. "What should we do?" asked Jiao Shan in a low-pitched voice. Amofo, Wufeng, Cecilia, and the others stood on the other side. They separated themselves from the two forces of the God Clan. They had maintained a relatively safe distance from the others, carefully watching to see how it would develop. Don't interfere for the time being. You guys just need to observe them. Amofo smiled oddly. I think they don't have extra energy to deal with us now. Of course, we shouldn't attack them, either. Stay aside and don't get involved in their battle. I find the situation getting more and more interesting by the minute. Don't you think so? Everybody stooped and smiled. They all looked relaxed. Phelps is crazy, Mia broke the impasse. Before the Ascot family warriors gathered, she flung her hand. We won't play with them. We'll go now. If they stayed still and fought the experts of the Ascot family who would come here soon, it would be a fierce battle. Mia knew that it was unnecessary. Well, if she left and didn't participate in the battle to avoid the warriors of the Ascot family, would Phelps and what let their warriors pursue her? If you don't leave the 7-colored demonic flower, you're not allowed to leave. Shiryen said coldly, pushing the thorn deeper into Phelps' chest. A red wound cracked. People could vaguely see Phelps's beating heart. Shiryen just needed to push his thorn several inches further, and Phelps would die. Kill! 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 Phelps screamed crazily like a snake whose tail was stepped on. He roared and asked what to carry out the massacre. All the experts of the Ascot family hadn't arrived yet. However, What and the other 6 were all warriors in the profound realms. They weren't afraid of engaging in a fight against Mia. Seeing Phelps bleeding tragically, he didn't think much. While Shiryen's arm was slowly moving, he dashed out furiously. The members of the Ascot family burst out like an erupting volcano. They began to attack Mia, Man, and her soldiers. What and his team aimed at Mia directly in just a blink. Hand us the 7-colored demonic flower, shouted What coldly. You guys are crazy. You dare attack us. Let's see how you will explain this to the Elder Committee. Mia's face was so cold. If you dare to enter the ancient continent, you shouldn't be afraid of being killed. Phelps, you're such a coward. Do you think you will be eligible to be the next chief of the Ascot family? Perhaps you should die. It's good news to our family anyway. The *TCH. You should die. Phelps shouted ear-splittingly. The 2 future leaders of the God Clan's big forces had called each other sister and brother. But now, their relationship was officially broken. What led 6th Third Sky of ethereal god realm experts of the Ascot family? He started to attack Mia. In just a blink, this area of the swamp received an earth-shaking attack. Different energies and skills impacted, sending multicolored lights into the sky like beautiful fireworks. The air exploded all together with the ground. As they were all experts at 2nd and 3rd Sky of ethereal god realm, once they struck, the ground around them was smashed, creating deep ditches. Currents of energy meandered like 5-colored rivers that entangled and hit each other in the sky. They twisted, creating lightning strikes and shooting everywhere. This entire area was covered in energy attacks. If someone could watch from the sky, he would find that the flood current of energy in different colors had destroyed the entire area, smashed plants, rocks, and decimated everything standing in its way like a surging colorful sea. Amofo's team was both thrilled and scared. They exchanged looks and released protecting barriers to shield themselves, preventing the energy attacks from attacking their bodies. Energy exploded in the swamp area. Brutal and malicious powers Upanishads impacted, barged, and crushed each other, which also chaotically stirred up the earth and heaven energy. They left so many deep ditches and cracks on the ground. Before they haven't finished, we shouldn't join hands. We must wait patiently. Wu Feng smiled wickedly. He clasped his hands inside. That man is really dangerous if he could come up with a smart plan like that. We've all gained benefits from him. Everybody agreed with him and looked at Shiryen with respect and excitement. The 4 people including Cecilia, Shiryen, Jiao Shan, and Jiao Hai who used to roll their eyes at Shiryen were smiling. The hatred they got for Shiryen was all cleared. Oh right, you said that his soul consciousness isn't bound by shackles of the ancient continent? Did you tell the truth? Suddenly, Emofo patted his head and screamed in astonishment. They all looked at Shengyu. It's true. He can recognize the life energy fluctuations around him. His soul consciousness isn't affected, said Shang Yingyu with conviction. Mo Fo's eyes brightened. He nodded and said in a low-pitched tone, after this battle, if both the Fernandez and the Ascot family get damaged, perhaps, we can use his magical ability to kill all the opponents in this swamp. We can hunt them down no matter where they hide. Wu Feng and Cecilia were strangely excited. They couldn't even hide the smile on their face. Their eyes got hotter looking at Shuryen. Sigh. If he had appeared 5 years earlier, we wouldn't have been in this passive situation, said Wu Feng with emotions. Xia Zhao, you should give up the resentment you have against him. From now on, you can't attack him anymore. Mo Fo coldly glared at Xia Zhao. Wu Feng, Cecilia, Shang Yingyu, Jiao Shan, and Jiao Hai also glared at Xia Zhao with a warning. They wanted him to commit now. Don't worry. I don't want to be killed. Before we can confirm that we are safe, I won't do anything to him, snarled Xia Zhao. Well, you guys don't need to worry about that, Cecilia giggled and threw Xia Zhao a contemptuous look. Honestly, he isn't the other's equal match. People all chuckled with odd faces. They couldn't help but laugh as if they agreed with Cecilia. Xia Zhao grimaced more. It was a frozen swamp area with white mist hovering. Through the mist, people could see the massive glacier elongating towards the horizon. This area was the adjacent area to the glacier. Crack! Crack! The sound when the ice cracked arose. A figure appeared and stood on the iceberg with a cold face. Swoosh! 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 People glided and pierced through the air. Shortly after, dozens of warriors stood behind him. They all had abundant and long breaths, giving people the sharp feeling of blades. Young master, we've pierced through the barrier. Peyton squinted, slightly bowed, and waited for Haig's order. Let me check. He closed his eyes. A dark flame slowly arose above his head. It swayed like a small meteor and released the power of the Haven flames together with the powerful soul energy. After a while, Haig changed his face into a dark and confused complexion. Damn it! What the heck do they think they're doing? Young master, what's going on? Asked Peyton with surprise. It seems like Mia's and Phelps' teams are engaging in battle while those low pagans are watching them. I guess they had their mind occupied. They are doing something unimaginable. Damn, they will destroy our mission. Haig had 2 different auras that alternated each other in his body. Sometimes, he was so furious like the most powerful volcano, while at other times, he was like a freezing chamber that could freeze people's souls. The extremely cold energy and the heat in his body made him change his auras as he pleased, giving people a terrifying impression. Haig had planned and carried out the plan to eradicate outstanding seeds of different big star areas. It was also the merit he wanted to show to the Elder Committee. To ensure the success of this operation, he had sacrificed a little bit to come here and help Mia and Phelps clear the obstacles. He knew that this plan wasn't wrong. As long as they could kill all the warriors of the other star areas to fulfill this operation, he could get approval from the Elder Committee. However, as soon as they got into this area, they found that their allies hadn't had any achievement. They were fighting each other. The volcano in Haig's mind erupted. Get there at max speed. I want them to give me a good explanation for their deeds. He wouldn't allow anyone to interrupt his big plan. Peyton was confused, but he didn't dare to ask much. He nodded and turned to his soldiers. Guys, urge your powers to the utmost. We must clear the troubles in the swamp quickly. Strong warriors of Bradley kept silent. Thick murderous aura started to diffuse from their bodies. They all let their energy surge and answer Peyton's order. For the time being, explosions arose. Shadows began to dash away, which left dozens of deep holes on the ground. Chapter 1121, Prevail. Chapter 1121, Prevail, _. In the center of the swamp, the chaotic energy was wreaking havoc. Different energy attacks impacted, killing and clearing the entire area. Members of the Ascot family gathered from different corners of the place as they got Watt's call through the sound stone. Their force became stronger. Since Phelps's realm wasn't so high, Vic had to worry that he would be undergoing hardships in the ancient continent. Thus, he had assigned almost all of the elite warriors at ethereal god realm of the family to this operation so they could protect him. No one wanted anything bad to happen to him. Thus, although Phelps's realm wasn't really profound, the general competence of the Ascot family's force in the swamp surpassed the Fernandez's. Seeing more warriors of the Ascot family arrive, Mia's team was pressured even harder. Many of the Ascot's warriors had aimed at Mia. They wanted to force her to give them the 7-colored demonic flower. However, Mia was the strongest warrior with many divine weapons. At the same time, her skills were all mastered. What and the other peak of ethereal god realm experts were surrounding Mia, but they couldn't force her. Mia just had to endure a little hardship. Emofo, Cecilia, and the others were onlookers. While watching, their faces were getting stern as they were frightened. They knew how strong Mia was. This woman of the Fernandez family was not only the smart and cunning mind, but she was also an outstanding individual. Her personal powers were really intimidating. It was no wonder that she was appointed to the mission to this ancient continent. Everybody started to calculate. They knew that they must be careful when facing Mia. Phelps sat neatly, his face cold and dark. His eyes were like icicles that pierced Mia. Sometimes he even cursed. While Shiryen was holding Phelps, his face was calm and cold as if he was just watching a play. He looked like he was waiting until one side was defeated or even killed to give his other request. However, Shiryen discolored all of a sudden. The co-soul behind his head reflected an extremely fierce energy fluctuation. Closing his eyes, Shiryen focused on seeing. His soul consciousness extended, reaching the area outside the swamp. He could sense the flows of extraordinary energy. It seemed like many intimidating creatures had entered the swamp area. Moreover, they were dashing towards his area. After a while, he took a deep breath, his face so chilled. He could sense the aura and direction of Haig's team. He had almost confirmed that the coming warriors belonged to one force of the God Clan, one of the 12 families. Just like Mia and Phelps, they came to this ancient continent to clear the prodigies of the big star areas. He didn't need to ask to know their purpose for coming to this area. Shiryen had planned to see how the situation develops. After sensing, he changed his visage and recalculated his plan. He muttered in Phelps' ear and said coldly, "It's just a waste of my time and your time if you guys fight like this. It's not easy to deal with Mia. I think you guys have aimed at the wrong target. Yeah, you should attack you, man. If you can capture you, man, I think Mia will hand us the 7-colored demonic flower." Phelps' eyes brightened. With a cold smile hanging on the corner of his mouth, Phelps threw What a glance and asked him to attack you, man. What understood tacitly. He gave his young master a curt nod that was unrecognizable. He discreetly signaled the others. Some members of the Ascot family who were attacking Mia slowly changed targets. Although they were harsh when attacking Mia, they didn't dare to attack her with lethal strikes. Mia was the key member of the Fernandez family anyway. If they killed her, it would lead to a war between the two families. They couldn't bear this responsibility. Although Yuman was also a member of the Fernandez family, he wasn't really important. Even if he was killed, it wouldn't cause a big commotion. Watt's team secretly changed their target. Everything is going well. Wufeng clapped his hands and excitedly calculated. After the two families fight each other and get damaged, perhaps we will have a chance to overturn the situation. The eyes of Emofo, Cecilia, and Xia Zhao became hot. Their lines of sight raked through Mia's and Phelps's rings as if they could see the rare and precious materials. They had to grasp for their breaths. Throughout the recent 5 years, Mia's and Phelps's teams had joined hands and operated around the swamp area. They had killed many warriors of the other star area and harvested the materials that the others had collected. The warriors of the God Clan had also collected a lot of crystals and herbal materials. They had almost cleaned up the heaven and earth products in this swamp area. They had been through many difficulties to get to this ancient continent for the precious natural products. They also knew what Mia and Phelps kept in their rings. They weren't ordinary items. That was why they had become so excited. As long as he agrees to help us, Mia and Phelps couldn't hide. Haha, I couldn't believe that we got such a marvelous encounter in this deadly situation. Seems like our time is coming. Mofo also smiled. Rumble. 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 What and the other three experts of the Ascot family suddenly ditched Mia. Before Mia could react, they had captured Yuman. Beams of gold light as big as a thumb wound around Yuman's god body like real chains. Those light beams slowly squeezed and sank into his flesh. If Yuman wiggled, he winced in pain. His face was twisted. We can have a quiet moment now, What grinned and looked at Mia coldly. He placed a shiny silver sword on Yuman's neck. That sharp blade radiated a cold and dark halo. It looked like it could cut off Yuman's head in a second. Mia's soft body shivered. Her charming face turned as pale as a paper sheet. She gritted her teeth, her venomous eyes gazing at what? You dared to attack my people. I'll remember this. I swear I won't let you go easily. Under her resentful eyes, What was chilled. He felt so uncomfortable. He glanced at Phelps and took a deep breath. You know what I want. Mia looked at Phelps. Phelps wore a dark face and he laughed coldly. My good sister Mia, I just want to live. Please help me. Yeah, you know me, right? You know that to survive, I can do anything. Such a coward who is afraid of death. Do you think you're worth receiving the position of the chief of Ascot family? I think your father is blind. Mia scolded angrily. Afterward, she stroked a ring on her left hand. A dark blue halo glowed. A yellow crystal emerged in front of her. The amber crystal captured a peculiar flower, which had a beautiful woman face. That flower seemed to be frozen, but the exquisite facial features of that little beauty were still clear. It looked like a glamour was just sleeping. That crystal was as big as a millstone. It hovered quietly in front of Mia. She pondered for a while and then pointed at the crystal, for you. The crystal spun and slowly flew towards Phelps. It halted above his head. A strange, fresh aroma emitted from the crystal, which was so pleasant to the soul. It was the seven-colored demonic flower. Shiryen grinned, reaching his hand to grab it. The amber crystal turned into a yellow light beam that disappeared into his fantasy sky ring. It's real. Mofo, Cecilia, and the onlookers sobered from their joy. They were bewildered and it became awkward. This battle ends so quickly. The battle between the Ascot and the Fernandez families hadn't cost any lives. There were some minor wounds, which wasn't the result that Cecilia and Mofo had expected. They looked regretful as the situation didn't turn out as they had hoped. Too quick. It shouldn't have happened this way. Mofo frowned. He became tense. He hissed, would that kid stop his deed when he got the item? No? Isn't his purpose to stir up the dispute between the Ascot and the Fernandez families? It's not that simple, right? Said Wu Feng. Prepare to retreat now. Shang Yingyu suddenly hissed. That bastard came here for the seven-colored demonic flower. He won't care about us. He won't cooperate with us either. Hearing her, people changed their faces. The plan that filled their mind was now just a joke. Without Shiryen's cooperation, their calculation was just a lie to themselves and to the others. They weren't equal opponents of the Ascot and the Fernandez families. If Shiryen didn't help them, their situation couldn't change a bit. He wouldn't help us? At all. Cecilia bit her lower lip. Nope, Shang Yingyu said curtly. Get out of here. Get out of here immediately. We should leave now. Mofo, Wu Feng, and Xia Zhao discolored. They didn't dare to linger. As told by Shang Yingyu, they quickly dashed away. Mia and Phelps's soldiers didn't stop them. They were watching Shiryen, Phelps, and Yuman. I'm a man of my words. Under the God Clan's warriors gazing, Shiryen slowly drew the bone thorn in Phelps' chest and abdomen. He whispered to Phelps, with your powerful self-recover, it shouldn't be a problem to recover. I wish you and Mia could get along well later. Before he had finished his words, his figure became vague and slowly disappeared into nothingness. He vanished in people's sight. Phelps wiped the trickles of blood on the corners of his mouth. He waved at What, release him. What immediately untied Yuman together with the warriors of the Ascot family. They handed back Yuman, who stood behind Phelps. Phelps was looking at Mia with cold eyes. Mia and Phelps glared at each other for a few seconds. They didn't talk and they turned around. They walked in different directions like they were strangers. The union of the two great families shattered from that point on. Chapter 1122, The Servant Flower and the Master Flower. Chapter 1122, The Servant Flower and the Master Flower, _ Shi Yan was sitting cross-legged on a brown stone by a crystal-clear lake. Swoosh! A light flashed and the amber crystal emerged in front of him. Inside that amber crystal was a beautiful flower that had the face of a beautiful woman in her sleep. This flower was peculiar and yet marvelous. Shi Yan took out the book that Shang Chen gave him. He read it for a while and compared the flower with the figure in the book. Compared to the drawings, there was no doubt that it was the seven-colored demonic flower. All the features of this flower, including the beautiful woman's face, the jade roots, and a few leaves, showed him that it was what he wanted. A flow of soul consciousness was sent to the seven-colored demonic flower. Shi Yan wanted to use the soul consciousness to check it deeper. The amber crystal was used to seal the seven-colored demonic flower, which would prevent the flower from shriveling. This crystal was made with some unique materials. It was filled with steam and energy fluctuation. It should be a magical, exquisite container. His soul consciousness moved around and seeped into the demonic flower to sense. Shortly after, Shi Yan frowned. His eyes sparkled with confusion. He pulled his mind and observed closely. It didn't feel right. His face changed silently. According to the description in Shang Chen's book, the seven-colored demonic flower had a demonic aura that gave people a feeling of seeing something evil and cold. It could hypnotize people. When using the soul consciousness to sense, the warrior would feel dizzy because of the invasion of the toxic air from the flower. But Shi Yan didn't feel like that. It was clean and clear. There were no pollutants. Its aura was fresh with a faint aroma that relaxed the soul. It was what he felt when he entered the flower. Totally different. His eyes darkened as the flame of anger ignited and burned his heart. The co-soul floating behind his head also moved fiercely. A refreshing and immaculate aura flew out of the amber crystal, storming into his co-soul when he didn't recognize it. His co-soul stopped flickering. The auras of the heaven flames became distinctive. Oh! Shi Yan was astounded. He was bewildered. He looked at the crystal he was holding. Observing the fresh, blooming flower, his soul consciousness tried to sense further. The magical aura from the beautiful flower had entered his co-soul and made the auras of the heaven flames forming his co-soul more distinctive. It calmed down his bouncing co-soul and made the flows of auras cling onto each other. It didn't feel right. Shi Yan retrieved his soul consciousness and his finger touching the crystal. He darkened his face, watching the fresh flower and frowning. He knew something wasn't right. This flower wasn't similar to what he understood. Maybe Mia had made a counterfeit and it could contain something dark and evil, which aimed at him. The more he thought about it, the bigger the possibility became. Swoosh! 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 The sounds of wind tearing arose and approached his area. From the sounds, he knew that there wasn't only one warrior coming. The co-soul transmitted soul fluctuations and sensed. He knew who was coming, so he didn't hasten to leave or hide. Shi Yan sat on the brown rock by the clear lake, waiting in silence. After 15 minutes, Mo Fo, Wu Feng, Wu Bai, Cecilia, Shang Yingyu, and Xia Zhao appeared. They watched here and there, and even their back, and then slowly came to him. Ah! Shang Yingyu couldn't help but scream. She looked at him in fright. A little joy flashed in her clear but cold eyes. Mo Fo, Cecilia, and the others were shaken. They didn't think much and gathered by Shi Yan instantly. Just like him, they stood or sat by the rock and looked at him curiously. Are they after you? Cecilia smiled sweetly and charmingly. Her beautiful body flashed and her curvy, but was bouncing as she stopped by Shi Yan. A mesmerizingly sweet aroma came to Shi Yan's nostrils with the wind. Since everybody knew to whom she was talking to, they all looked at Shi Yan with hope. No. Shi Yan wore a faint face. He frowned and didn't retrieve the amber crystal floating in front of him. Hearing him, they exhaled in relief. No one doubted his words. Then, they relaxed and stopped being anxious anymore. Some lay down or sat on the rocks by the lake, grasping for their breaths and using the divine crystals to refill energy. Since they were all future leaders of the big star areas, they had many experiences in fighting. They wouldn't waste any minute as they would use them to recover. It was better to recover their energy and body condition to the peak to deal with the battle that could possibly take place in the next moment. Actually, you could have used Phelps for a little more. If we made them fight to the death, when one side got damaged, it would have been much easier for us. As Cecilia heard him, her seducing face was thrilled. She proactively approached him, her face bright. If one of them was done, we would have taken the upper hand here. If you helped us chase them, none of them would have escaped. Shang Yingyu nodded. She looked regretful too. Shi glared at Cecilia and said coldly, well thought. Too bad it wasn't that simple. Why did you say that? Cecilia's smile paused, her face earnest. Did you find any new commotion? Mofo, Wu Feng, and Wu Bai were using divine crystals to recover their powers. She had caught their attention. Everybody was waiting for Shiyan's answer. Unfortunately, Shiyan pulled the corner of his lips and didn't answer her. Instead, he looked at Shang Yingyu. You come and check this. Is it the real 7-colored demonic flower? It had been 5 years, and it had worn out Shang Yingyu's resentment against Shiyan. Moreover, as she knew that she had to count on Shiyan a lot, she didn't pretend and just frankly walked to Shiyan's stone. She extended one jade-like finger, touching the amber crystal and releasing a flow of soul consciousness to sense. She was Shang Chen's daughter. Of course, her knowledge of peculiar and marvelous materials should be profound enough. In other words, her attainment shouldn't be less than Shang Chen's. It was because Shang Chen's knowledge of medicinal medicines came from Enlia, Shang Yingyu's mother, who was a brilliant alchemist. Shang Yingyu's fingertip touched the crystal. Her long eyelashes batted. Gradually, she furrowed her bold brows as if she had found something wrong. Shiyan's heart sank to the bottom. From her facial expression, he got the answer. He couldn't hide his anger. Shang Yingyu's furrowed brows twitched and then relaxed. She spoke as if she couldn't believe it. It's not the 7-colored demonic flower, indeed. Shiyan's straight back lowered. His face changed when he sighed begrudgingly. I thought so. According to your father's description in the book, the 7-colored demonic flower has a demon aura with a hypnotizing ability. Although that flower is gorgeous with a human face, its aura's completely different. You don't need to feel down anyway. Shang Yingyu looked at him, her eyes brightened. Although it's not the 7-colored demonic flower, it's much more precious than the 7-colored demonic flower. This is a 7-colored spirit flower. It's much more precious and rare than the 7-colored demonic flower. It's the rarest priceless item at the original incipient grade. Mofo and the others were still eavesdropping. Hearing her, they were all stirred up as they looked at her. Is it the true 7-colored spirit flower? Asked Wu Feng with a stern face. It can't be faked. Shang Yingyu nodded. Mia must have taken the 7-colored demonic flower together with the 7-colored spirit flower. She wanted to keep 7-colored demonic flower to save someone called Yuko. Even though she had to give the 7-colored spirit flower to you, I would think that she is angry now. Haha, if it's true, she has a big loss this time, Mofo laughed oddly. They knew about the 7-colored spirit flower. They started to discuss boisterously. Looking at the beautiful fresh flower, they were so curious. Quite the contrary, Shiyan was confused. The 7-colored spirit flower and the 7-colored demonic flower grow together. They are the servant flower and the master flower. The 7-colored demonic flower is the servant flower. It will draw and transmit nutrients to the 7-colored spirit flower to prevent that flower from withering before it blooms. As the master, the 7-colored spirit flower can take the fluids and nutrients from the 7-colored demonic flower to nurture and grow. After that, it will take the main roles. Shang Yingyu could see him doubting. She explained earnestly, when they encounter danger, the 7-colored spirit flower will become invisible. It will make the 7-colored demonic flower bear all the dangers. It's strange, right? As Mia could take both of them, she surely prepared carefully before she came here. Tell me their functions directly, said Shiyan with a frown. The 7-colored demonic flower has the nickname of the Soul Custodian. It can clear all the dirty things or pollutants in the soul altar. The 7-colored demonic flower can clean them all. Aside from that, the 7-colored demonic flower is the main material to refine many pellets that nurture the soul. It's really precious. It can even help the warriors who cultivate mind power Upanishad. Pausing for a while, Shangyu continued, the seven-colored spirit flower has a magical function. It can combine the heaven flames with different natures. Also, it can fuse the powers Upanishads with similar characteristics. Her eyes brightened up. She looked at Shiryen without blinking even once. I think it's really suitable for you. She knew that Shiryen had heaven flames. Shiryen became bewildered, his face strange. He just frowned and said nothing. It isn't really important as it can clean your soul altar unless your soul altar is infected. In that case, the seven-colored demonic flower will be the precious treatment for the right disease. For example, that Yuko has the soul-rotting aphis in his soul altar. He needs the seven-colored demonic flower to eradicate them. Aside from such a situation, the seven-colored demonic flower can't perform its best. Compared to the seven-colored spirit flower, it's not worth using. Anyway, nothing can compete with the spirit flower when fusing heaven flames or powers Upanishads, added Shangyu. Chapter 1123. Getting Serious. Chapter 1123. Getting Serious. Just like Shangyu had assumed, Mia was indeed so angry that she wanted to vomit blood. After diverging from Phelps's team, she didn't hurry to kill Mo Fo's group, the fish that had escaped her net. She chose a place to rest and contemplated with a dark face. The group of the Fernandez family's warriors scattered around her, looking at her begrudgingly. Yuman bowed to her, his complexion embarrassed. It's I who had messed up your business. No, it has nothing to do with you. Mia swung her hand, her face frosty. It's Phelps and that damn brat. I didn't expect that he would be alive after 5 years raiding this area. I hate him. He broke my good business. Miss, why did you give him the seven-colored spirit flower? Compared to the seven-colored demonic flower, its value is priceless. Yuman lowered his head and sighed as he was touched. He, of course, understood why Mia did that. Besides vowing his life to repay Mia's deep favor, he didn't know what else to do. It's true that the seven-colored spirit flower is much more precious, but it can't save Uncle Yuko. Just let him take it. I will find another chance to take it back. Mia frowned, but it'll be troublesome to talk with Haig about this. He wanted that seven-colored spirit flower. He and I have dealt the price already. I didn't think we could encounter such things. Then what should we do? Yuman was frightened. It's not easy to deal with Haig, though. It's okay. Just tell him the truth. It seems like we have to depend on Haig's force. Otherwise, I'm afraid that we can't capture that brat, sighed Mia. Not long after their conversation, the sound stone in Mia's sleeve vibrated. Haig wanted to talk to her. While she was fighting Phelps, her sound stone transmitted many calls. They were all from Haig. It was obvious that Haig had found something. It was an urge to know Mia's and Phelps' situation. However, she didn't pick it up. And now, when the dispute with Phelps ceased temporarily, Mia could ease her mind to talk to Haig. Also, she needed his help to clear all the obstacles in the swamp. What the heck were you doing? Haig's snarl came from the soundstone. I've just talked to Phelps. He said that you wanted him to die. You didn't want to use the seven-colored demonic flower to exchange for his life. That's why you guys. Haig shouted right at the beginning and criticized Mia's inappropriate behaviors. His voice was harsh indeed. Mia wore a cold face. She didn't hasten to snap back. Waiting after Haig had finished, she replied indifferently, It's much worse than what you thought. I didn't give them the seven-colored demonic flower. What I handed them was the seven-colored spirit flower. It was the seven-colored spirit flower you wanted. Do you feel angrier now? Haig quieted down his thundering. After a while, he had recovered his placid mind. It's just a servant. Why do you have to care so much? Why didn't you give that brat the seven-colored demonic flower instead? You thought that I couldn't kill him when I arrived? You're always smart, but why did you suddenly act dumb this time? I'm afraid you can't kill him anyway. Mia frowned. It's true that you can lock his location and direction, but he's cultivated space power Upanishad. Even though he can't escape the ancient continent, he could run away in this area. This swamp is much bigger than a life star. It's not easy to catch him. What do you think? Haig's voice recovered its coldness. You've never wanted to bear a loss. I want to know your plan. I know you understand that this operation of mine shouldn't have any mistakes. I don't care about the grudge between you and Phelps. I will never let you guys break my plan. Haig said the last sentence curtly and resolutely. Don't worry. I know your situation. I won't cause troubles. Mia pondered for a few seconds and then said, You help me find them first. I have a plan. All right. By the crystal-clear lake, Shiryen was sitting on the brown rock and studying the 7-colored spirit flower with awe for a long time. All of a sudden, he put it back to his fantasy sky ring. Just like Shang Yingyu had said, the value of the 7-colored spirit flower was evidently much higher than the 7-colored demonic flower. To him, a warrior with heaven flames, it was constructive. With this 7-colored spirit flower, perhaps he could fuse his different heaven flames into 1 or 2 flows, which would give him a magnificent boost. However, he couldn't do anything to the soul-rotting aphis inside Yang Tian Emperor's brain. Shiryen darkened his face. He hated Mia so much. Thank you for telling me the functions of the 7-colored spirit flower. Lifting his face to look at Shang Yingyu, he said faintly, in return, I'm going to tell you something. Another force of the God clan has entered the swamp. This force is much more intimidating than both the Fernandez and the Ascot families. If you guys were unlucky and let them found you, I think you wouldn't have escaped death. Hearing him, Emofo, Cecilia, and the others had their faces turn ash-gray. They felt so hopeless and desperate. When Phelps and Mia had joined hands, they hardly had a chance to survive. And now another dominant force of the God clan had just arrived. Would they have a chance to survive? Please give us a hand. Cecilia moved her sexy body agilely, looking at him with a begging face and speaking in a soft voice. If you can help us, we can get over this tough challenge and wait until the day the center opens. The center? Shiryen looked at the others as he didn't have a clue. You don't know? Mofo sounded surprised. Wu Feng, Wu Bai, and Shang Yingyu also wore awkward countenances. Mofo suddenly felt reluctant. He hurried to explain. The ancient continent is divided into 5 lands. In the first 5 years, the 4 surrounding lands will open. After 5 years, the center will be unsealed. That center is the essence of the ancient continent. It has more natural defenses and much more precious materials. The guiding fruits for the next time will also appear in the center. Well, in short, the center is where all the forces fight against each other to take the best resources. You guys aren't afraid of the God clan when you enter the center? Frowned Shiryen. I heard that the center has many death traps. Dangers are everywhere. Although the God clan is strong, it's not easy to pursue us all the time, Mofo explained with a dry smile. As long as you agree to help us go through the challenges, we can negotiate anything, said Wu Feng. Well, then you guys kill Sha Zhao first. Shiryen pursed his lips and looked at Sha Zhao, giving a malicious request. Suddenly, Mofo, Wu Feng, Wu Bai, Jiao Shan, Cecilia, and the others lay their eyes on Sha Zhao. Their eyes sparkled with strange lights. Sha Zhao felt chilled to the bone. He instinctively moved backward and summoned so many insects and venomous animals rolling under his feet. They covered him in layers. You are really going to listen to that brat? We fought against enemies together for so long. Just one sentence from him and you guys want to kill me. If we have to sacrifice only you to exchange for everybody else, we can only say sorry to you. Wu Feng nodded coldly as he was ready to strike. Sha Zhao discolored in fright. He looked at Shiryen indignantly and shouted, Don't bully me. I didn't gain anything at that time. You even hurt me. I have never thought about taking revenge. Do you really want me to die? Shiryen wore a cold face. Mofo's team looked at him as if they were waiting for a signal to kill Sha Zhao right in front of him. If one of us dies, our force will be a bit weaker. Can you guys discuss your resentment later? Advised Shang Yingyu. Squinting, Shiryen's face was harsh and cold. He sneered. However, as he was about to talk, he got startled. His face became so serious. He immediately closed his eyes. The co-soul burned behind his head and sent clear soul fluctuations back to him. He was wholly concentrating. Everybody was clueless. They didn't know why Shiryen suddenly acted weird at this critical moment. They knitted their brows and waited for his decision without bothering him. He's checking the situation around. Maybe Mia and Phelps are heading here. Shang Yu reminded people, which made people intense. Gradually, they found Shiryen becoming sterner. In the end, he knitted his brows tightly as if he was encountering something he couldn't handle. Seeing him like that, everybody else became restlessly insecure. They became more cautious. Swoosh! The dancing flame above Shiryen's head shrank, flashed, and then disappeared into the corner of his eye. Opening his eyes, Shiryen said in a low-pitched, serious tone, "It's much more troublesome." He didn't talk about asking for killing Xiaozhao anymore. Xiaozhao exhaled in relief as people focused on Shiryen. Recently, a flow of soul consciousness had gotten here. It was sensing our commotions. If I'm not wrong, the new coming force of the God Clan must have a warrior whose soul isn't bound in this ancient continent like me. Within a specific range in the swamp area, even if you hide thousands of meters underground, he can dig you up. People were so frightened. They could see the fear in each other's eyes as they were desperate in the dead corner. "I wouldn't care about your lives," Shiryen took a deep breath and said solemnly, "because I could always dodge Mia and Phelps. If I wanted to hide, they wouldn't even be able to find my breath. But it won't work that way anymore. That guy came. He's a big trouble to me too. It seems like I have to group with you guys." This time he didn't ask them to kill Xiaozhao or request any condition. He had directly agreed with their begging. However, they still had to wear the earth-gray face. No one could feel happy. Right before the fight, they were dispirited. They thought that they couldn't use any bit of strength to resist the God Clan. "We should have a better plan this time," Shiryan's eyes changed. He pulled himself together and finally got serious to counter the coming waves. Chapter 1124. Prepare the Ambush. Chapter 1124. Prepare the Ambush, _ By the clear lake, Shiryen was crouching on the ground and using his hard finger to draw a big circle under his feet. He also marked 4 points inside the circle. He pointed at the 4 points and clarified, "We're here. Mia's team is right next to us. Phelps's team is over there. The new coming team is at that position." He had illustrated their positions on the ground. The 4 marks he drew on the ground looked a bit like a rectangle. They stood in one corner while Mia, Haig, and Phelps were in the other 3 corners. There was a distance between them and Haig was the furthest from them. It would take him several days at least to get here. However, Mia's team was closest to them. Amofo, Cecilia, Wu Feng, and Shang Yu squatted by Shiryen. They focused on the map he had just drawn and frowned. "Including me, we have 12 warriors here. But if we face them directly, I'm afraid that we can't stand any force of theirs. Even if we scatter to attack each of the 3 forces, we will never gain the upper hand." Shiryen frowned and lowered his voice. Haig's arrival had disturbed his plan. Now, Shiryen had to group with Mofo. If Haig hadn't come, he would have used his sharp senses and his power Upanishad to run away. He could have swagger in this area without worrying about Mia or Phelps going after him. He could have even hidden in the dark to trouble Mia and Phelps. Perhaps he would have had a chance to rob the 7-colored demonic flower. However, Haig's arrival had messed up his good plan. Haig's soul consciousness wasn't shackled, so he could merely locate Shiryan's location. Wherever he hid, he would be dug up. Thus, he wasn't going to have a peaceful time. Shortly after, Mia would find him. He would be confined. Even though he could use the space power Upanishad to run away, he couldn't use it unlimitedly. It was the ancient continent, so its space also had restrictions. Also, he couldn't use his space power Upanishad to get out of this ancient continent. Every time he teleported, it would cost a lot of energy. He used to consider carefully. Every time he tore the space to run away, he had to consume at least a quarter of his god power. After that, he had to meditate to recover. Or else, he could only escape 4 times. If Mia, Haig, and Phelps scattered and formed a circle to attack him, every time he teleported away, Haig could always locate him instantly. The warriors of the 3 forces would come after him and give him no time to recover. After running 4 times, his god power would be drained, which reduced his competence massively. He wouldn't be able to withstand the enemies. Without Haig, they didn't have the ability to locate Shiryen. Shiryen wouldn't feel anxious. But it had already given him a headache. We got good news. Shiryen's fingers fiddled around on the ground. He lowered his voice. The one who used the soul consciousness to sense us doesn't know that I have a similar ability yet. He wasn't careful. His soul consciousness fell directly above us. That's why I got him. Haig hadn't expected that there would be someone like him in this area with the unbound soul consciousness. Thus, he had sent his soul consciousness around several thousand meters above Shiryen's group, which had helped him count the number and assess their general competence. That's how Shiryen detected his probing soul consciousness. Different from Haig, every time Shiryen used his soul consciousness to sense around, he would never be that reckless. As soon as he touched a life energy fluctuation, he would come back immediately. He wouldn't dare to probe for a long time to figure out the details. One was careful and the other was too confident. It helped Shiryen understand Haig's powers while Haig knew nothing about him. Haig didn't know that this swamp had Shiryen as an unpredictable variable. We must exploit this well. Sexy Cecilia was so placid at this moment. Lights of wisdom twinkled in her eyes as she was planning something. Mofo, Wu Feng, and Wu Bai quieted down and listened to Cecilia. They knew that Cecilia could help them. Throughout the 5 years, every time they had planned anything wicked, Cecilia was in charge. She had proven her ability in this aspect. Shiryen was surprised. He started to observe this plump, sexy woman. He couldn't help but scan her body. She was wearing a tight green leather skirt that lingered on her snow-white, slender thighs. Her delicate, fist-sized waist had outlined her ample breasts. She was truly a charming Nagini with breathtaking curves. She could arouse any man looking at her. Cecilia parted her lips into a grin as she felt Shiryen's eyes lingering on her body. She stretched lazily and arched her tiny waist, which had heated up Mofo, Wu Feng, and Wu Bai. They seemed to temporarily forget the coming danger. Shiryen also had a flame in his eyes. He pulled himself together and said faintly, "Do you have any plan?" For the time being, he hadn't had any solution. Any of the 3 forces they were about to face was strong enough to smash them. With Haig providing the locations, Phelps's and Mia's teams had a good guide. With this premise, they couldn't play any trick. Let me think carefully. It's really annoying and troublesome. Cecilia charmingly placed a finger on her full-lip mouth. She slowly squatted and studied the map that Shiryen had drawn. Because of this posture, her ample butts had showcased her sexy curves that were about to tear her tight leather skirt. Xia Zhao and some men sitting behind her gawked and drooled. They couldn't help but swallow saliva, cursing that slutty woman. Shang Yingyu kept a cold face. She looked at Cecilia with disdain and then at Xia Zhao, Mofo, and Wu Bai. She couldn't hide her sneer. Xia Zhao, Mofo, and Wu Bai laughed to cover their embarrassing situation. They had to put an effort in taking their eyes off Cecilia's hot body. Mofo gave a dry smile. Everybody should think. Yeah, just try. We will have a solution then. Who knows what dirty things you have in your mind? Shang Yingyu scolded him. They felt more shamed. However, Cecilia seemed to not be bothered. She knew that Xia Zhao, Mofo, and the others had sneaked on her. She giggled. Her beautiful eyes flirted, raking through Xia Zhao, Mofo, and Wu Bai. Her seducing posture made people drool. Oh, this slut. Everybody gasped. They felt irritated and they felt annoyingly hot inwardly. You are all about to die, but your mind still has room for those things. Pathetic. Shang Yingyu rose her voice. Since they didn't know when they would lose their lives in this damn place, they released their real desires. They wanted to enjoy the pleasure right in front of them. As a woman, Shang Yingyu didn't understand this negative thought of men. Thus, she became angry. There's a solution. I wonder if it works. She smiled at Shiryen and only Shiryen, automatically ignoring Mofo and Xia Zhao. Mofo, Wu Bai, Jiao Shan, Jiao Hai, and the others showed their admiration, although they felt a little lost because Cecilia had paid her attention only to Shiryen, the one with the special function here. Do tell, Shiyan said faintly. Cecilia looked like a ripe peach. She had the aura of a mature woman, which was an uncontrollable attraction to any man. Shiyan wasn't an exception. However, since he had cultivated the unique power Upanishad which had made him continuously struggle with negative emotions, his ability to control his desires was much better than normal people. Thus, he could quiet down his surging desire. He wouldn't have lustful thoughts when seeing Cecilia's sexy body. He could be sober when dealing with important issues. At this point, Mo Fo, Wu Bai, Jiao Hai, and Jiao Shan couldn't compare to him. They didn't have experiences in fighting the negative desires. Shiyan's coldness and calmness had surprised Cecilia and Shang Yingyu. They gazed at him and regarded him more highly. A man who could stay calm in the critical moment and could sober his mind from the negative emotions was an exceptional warrior, indeed. The two women discreetly compared Shiyan to Mo Fo, Wu Bai, and Jiao Shan. Their pretty eyes sparkled as they were touched. Mo Fo, Wu Bai, Jiao Shan, and Xia Zhao were all outstanding talents of the Great Star areas. They were all future leaders of the forces everywhere. Most of them had competences to challenge warriors whose realms higher than theirs. Their minds were made of steel. However, those warriors couldn't be as calm as Shiyan in the critical moments. It seemed like Shiyan wasn't affected by the situation. Shang Yingyu and Cecilia were scared. They felt lucky that they didn't cause grudges against Shiyan and had him on their side. They don't know that we can see their direction. With this premise, we can prepare an ambush. Cecilia pointed at an area, which was also the lake. This place is good. I cultivate water power Upanishad. I can use this lake to set up many good things. Mo Fo, you have the earth power Upanishad. You can do more. We can dig up the ground and set up traps here. We should prepare layers of barriers and restrictions. We will activate that at the moment they jump in. And we can even leave early. Not a bad idea, Mo Fo nodded immediately. He assessed the surroundings and grinned. I have a lot of fiery earth mines. Once it explodes, even incipient God realm experts can't dodge in the short distance. I also have the Een lightning electric lance. Shang Yingyu's eyes brightened. Right, we can do this. Shiyan continued, strange light sparkling in his eyes. To make it more perfect, I can stay here as bait. We will guide them into our net. Chapter 1125, Why Me All the Time? Chapter 1125, Why Me All the Time, _ No, no, no. Surprisingly, when Cecilia, Mo Fo, and Wu Feng heard that he wanted to take risks, they discolored and stopped him altogether. Shiyan frowned. Everybody noticed something strange. They all looked at Shang Yingyu, waiting for her explanation. Under people's gazing, Shang Yingyu said coldly and reluctantly as usual, if something happens to you, we won't have eyes anymore. We can't survive in the swamp afterward. So, anybody can take risks except you. We won't let anything unexpected happen to you. Everybody nodded and advised him. Cecilia has a good plan. If nothing unexpected happens once we leave, the others will pass by this area to chase after us. Shiyan calculated for a while. Mia's team is closest to us. We just need to change our direction for a while. Then, she will definitely bring her force to chase after us. And to do that, she has to cross this area. Shiyan raked through the other warriors, his face cold and harsh. Unexpected things happen all the time. What if Mia doesn't go this way? What if she isn't going to pass through this area? If she doesn't go this way, will we just waste our barriers and tools that we've set up here? If our first move can't hurt the others severely, our next step will be much more difficult. Swinging his hand, he said resolutely, I'll stay. When I see that the situation isn't right, I can teleport away. Except for me, who can do that? No one answered him. Okay, then, we'll carry out this plan. I don't want to discuss more unless you can nominate someone who will stay here and die instead of me, said Shiyan indifferently. Everybody instinctively looked at Xia Zhao with sinister eyes. The cold, vicious light in Mo Fo's and Wu Feng's eyes made people shiver without feeling cold. What if we beat Xia Zhao up until he's almost dead and tie him here? Do you think it would be better? Asked Wu Feng in a cold voice. Mofo, Wufeng, and Cecilia nodded gently. They thought that it wasn't a bad idea, and it was possible, anyway. Xia Zhao felt so cold. He instinctively backed off and shouted crazily, "You mother asterisk curse. Why single me out every time? Who did I mock among of you?" He suddenly recalled something, looking at Shi Yan indignantly as his flame of anger shot up into the sky. "I know you want to earn his favor. He's useful to us. To please him and save him, you want to sacrifice me. All right, I don't want to play with you anymore. I'll get going now." Xia Zhao wore a cold face. He felt so disappointed with Mofo's team. He hated the wicked Mofo and Wufeng more than he hated Shi Yan. "Enough!" Shi Yan shouted solemnly, his voice icy cold. "It's true that I don't like Xia Zhao and I want to kill him. But not now. We're all in a death trap. Any force of the enemy is stronger than us. If you think about sacrificing Xia Zhao and wearing out your competence, I think I don't need to join hands with you guys because it's impossible to escape their pursuit going with you." Hearing him, people became embarrassed. No one answered him. "It's you too. Why did you suggest such a dirty solution?" Jiao Shan snarled at Mofo and Wufeng. "He knows to prioritize the important matters. Why can't you? If you guys want that, our brothers will leave this group too. If you can sacrifice Xia Zhao, maybe it's our brothers the next time. What do you say?" The others also nodded. Their faces looked resolute as if they were all about to separate from this group. "I said I'd stay." Shi Yan was sitting on the brown rock by the lake. He lifted up his head to look at the sky. He released his co-soul and said, "Mia's team will arrive in 1 day and 1 night. I think it's time for you to prepare. I will watch over you guys. Once their soul consciousness starts moving, I will tell you to stop. We shouldn't let him figure anything out." Xia Zhao stayed away from the others. He was ready to run for his life. At this moment, he hesitated. If he left this group, once he encountered any team, he would be killed instantly. There was no chance to survive. Xia Zhao knew this very well. Unless he had no option, he would never want to leave. "We admit that we were wrong. Don't go, Xia Zhao. We won't behave like that anymore." Mofo pondered and bowed to Xia Zhao in the distance, raising his hand. "By the name of my ancestor, I'm sure I will never aim at you anymore." "No more." Cecilia and Wufeng also nodded. They understood that if Xia Zhao left, people here would feel distressed, and it would be hard to get them united one more time. They were the weakest in the swamp. If the number of their members were reduced, they wouldn't have a chance to survive when confronting the other 3 forces. Thus, they had to put their ego aside and beg Xia Zhao not to leave. "I'm going to give you one more chance." Xia Zhao snorted. He walked back to them with a stiff back. Actually, he had just sighed in relief discreetly. He frowned, looking at Shi Yan, who was watching the sky, his face awkward. "Everybody, seize the time and work now." Mofo screamed. "We should take the time when he doesn't notice us and take action. Quick, arrange the barriers." He took them to a clear ground, pitching his voice. "Move away. I'm going underground with the fiery earth mines. I'll also set up a restriction. Once there's pressure on the surface, it will be activated. Don't stay too close to me." Mofo's icy eyes flashed sinisterly. As people were watching, he slowly drilled into the ground, which hadn't troubled him. He could move underground as smooth as fish swimming in water. Shi Yan squinted and paid attention. He found out that Mofo had entered 1,000 meters underground, and he was skillfully installing something. "I will install the Een Thunder electric lance on that tree. Don't touch its branches or leaves. It will affect my restriction." Shang Ying's cold voice arose. She was moving like a zigzag lightning strike between the trees around. Her porcelain arms danced in the air, making many magical hand seals and imprinting on the trees. She had even hung some special treasures there. "I'll check the bottom of the lake." Cecilia smiled charmingly before jumping into the crystal lake like a beautiful mermaid. She didn't even make the water splash. She got into the bottom of the lake quietly. The others also scattered and worked on their own barriers or restrictions. They had used many secret treasures that were fatally powerful. From this area, their ambush extended and made this area a field of terrifying barriers and restrictions. The energy fluctuations can be seen. Don't act rashly to stay concealed. If they find us, our labor here will be in vain. While arranging her restriction, Shang Yingyi reminded the others. Got it. We understand. Don't worry. I'm good at these kinds of ambush setups. I'm sure I will scare that B*TCH Mia out of her wits. Many warriors here were from the influential star areas. They clenched their jaws and used the most intimidating tricks they had. They had prepared this area with danger at every step. Even Shi Yan felt chilled just watching them. The Wu brothers had used many silver balls. Once they impacted by something, they would shoot countless beams of cold air, which could enter the soul altar directly and stab the sea of consciousness. Those sharp air beams would shatter the soul directly. Xia Zhao from the Gu God sect had released many demonic insects and venomous animals in the swamp. Those things were so tiny that Shi Yan's soul consciousness could hardly detect them. As they were merely invisible because they were so small, they could scatter in the air and earth and heaven energy around. Once the warriors took in the energy, they would enter their veins and body. They would be weakened unknowingly and they wouldn't be able to mobilize their energy anymore. Feeling the toxic insects that were dozens of times smaller than a hair sinking into the swamp not far from him, Shi Yan tried to count how many there were. He found more than dozens of thousands. Shi Yan felt his scalp tingling. He suddenly felt lucky that he got the poison-dipped cold bead. Otherwise, in the previous battle, not only could he not damage Xia Zhao, he was also poisoned badly. Xia Zhao could have killed him. Although this man's god power wasn't thick enough, he had many malignant tricks that were really hard to defend. Shi Yan had a feeling that if Mo Fo and Wu Feng had attacked to kill him, perhaps Xia Zhao could have killed some of them. While Shi Yan was still thinking, Xia Zhao lifted his head to look at him, his face odd. He stooped and his voice was stiff. I'll remember that you stopped them for me. I will repay this favor of yours. However, the grudge between us, it's not easy to be lifted up like that. Shi Yan was surprised. He stayed bewildered for a while before he could chuckle. He just nodded and said nothing. Splash! The water rushing sound arose from the lake behind him. A sexy figure moved agilely like a swimming fish slowly emerged. Her wet hair draped around her shoulders. Cecilia wore the leather dress that showcased her hot body. As her slender thighs moved in the lake, half of her body emerged from the water. She looked at Shi Yan in the distance and said, I've installed an interesting toy under the lake. But I need to control it. If I stay, it can perform at maximum capacity, which can damage them badly. Hey, can you take one person with you in that critical moment? Can you bring me and escape the scene? I'm sure I can kill one or two instantly if they get into the lake and fight. Shi Yan's eye flashed a strange light. He looked at Cecilia, who was showing him her absolute confidence. He pondered for a while and then nodded. I can take you with me. But you have to stay close to me and you can never leave for even a moment. Can you do that? Of course I can. Cecilia smiled happily and talked seductively. Don't worry. I won't cause you any trouble. I'm sure I will obey. Oh yeah, I will stick to you. Shi Yan frowned. He didn't look at her anymore and continued to watch the sky. He had to focus to prevent Haig's soul consciousness. Cecilia smiled, her beautiful legs moving as she slowly sank into the lake. Chapter 1126. The Fearful Formation Under the Lake. Chapter 1126. The Fearful Formation Under the Lake. _ It was a muddy road that meandered like a snake. Coin-sized leaves floated above the murky water and released faint, toxic gas. Mia took Yuman and the warriors of the Fernandas and moved along the narrow trail in the middle of a marsh at a normal pace. Yuman relaxed. He didn't need to use his energy to trace the opponents anymore. As Haig was giving them directions from time to time, he was free. Haig's soul consciousness could cover a larger area faster and more precisely than Yuman can track with his energy. Thus, he didn't need to waste his energy. Their speed wasn't so fast. Mia asked them not to hurry. They should consider recovering their energy first. Mia clearly knew that Phelps and Haig were also heading towards Shi Yan. Comparing the distances, her team was closer. If nothing unexpected happened, they would encounter Shi Yan's team first. But it wasn't what Mia wanted to see. Mia assumed that Mo, Wu Feng, and the others were in a dead corner. Haig's arrival had decided their fate. They had been backed into a deadly situation. If her team met them first, as the situation didn't go well, the others would risk their lives, which would possibly bring her team significant losses. She had brought the warriors of her family to this ancient continent with the primary purpose of entering the center. Before it was unsealed, she didn't want to lose many experts from her family. She wanted her people to slow down because she hoped they could get to the opponent's gathering point relatively at the same time as Phelps and Haig, which could reduce the efforts to clear up Mo, Wu Feng, and the others. Her precise plan had to change all of a sudden because of Haig's instant message. "There's a couple in front of you guys by the lake." They didn't leave with the others. "They're staying by the lake now." Haig sent her the message. "I've checked that man. He must be the one you asked me to focus on, the one who cultivates space power Upanishad." "He is staying there with a woman?" Mia's voice was getting colder. "Yeah, they're staying by the lake. Haha, I guess they seized the time to do something," sneered Haig. Mia's beautiful eyes flared with cold light. She replied nonchalantly, "Understood. I'll get there quickly." She cut off their communication and called out, "Guys, speed up." Yu Man was surprised. "The guy that has robbed the brilliant star fruit tree and our 7-colored demonic flower is isolated. We need to arrange well and try our best to kill him before Haig and Phelps come," explained Mia. Yu Man's eyes brightened up. He nodded as he understood. Together with the warriors of the Fernandez family, they accelerated. The lake was like a flawless mirror that was illuminated by the stars above. Their reflections twinkled in silver light on the lake surface. Sitting on a green-brown rock, Shuryen lifted his head and watched the stars twinkling in the sky. He squinted and stayed quiet. The clear and cold starlight sprinkled from the sky, congregating above his head as if there was a funnel that led to his brain. It gave him a fresh, pure air that wouldn't leave any dregs. The ancient continent moved around different big star areas. It wouldn't stop for a second as it was brutally crushing all the asteroids or dead stars standing in its way. The horizon of the ancient continent had deep blue halos that covered the entire sky. However, those halos were transparent and they allowed the light of the sun, moon, and stars to get through. Sitting on the rock, Shuryen didn't think about anything. He quieted down his mind, and he didn't even gather the earth and heaven energy proactively. Under that circumstance, he felt like he was getting close to this ancient continent. He felt like he had merged with the swamp and became a component of this ancient continent. The Kosol that was developed from the origin of Grace Mainland was taking in the aura like a small tornado. Slowly, earth and heaven energy gathered and poured into the ethereal extent inside Shuryen's soul altar. Starlight sprinkled and disappeared into the ethereal extent, entering a brilliant star in there. With the marvelous power of the brilliant star fruit tree, Shuryen had reached second sky of ethereal god realm, and his understanding of star power Upanishad had made new progress. And many different abilities of the star power Upanishad was still hovering in the tier of powers Upanishad. He just needed to sink his mind into the soul altar to touch the truth of star power. Mia's team hadn't arrived yet. He still had time, so he had to not waste it. Shuryen began to understand the new essence and ability of stars. His empty eyes looked at the horizon where the stars twinkling brightly. He suddenly hallucinated that he could reach the stars unlimitedly. It felt like if he reached out his hand, he could touch the stars in the sky. The brilliant, vast galaxy with countless stars moving around seemed to have something resonate with him. The dome of the sky of the ancient continent was covered by an icy blue halo, but it didn't prevent the starlight. The star energy reaching him was clear and swift. He said quietly, feeling his body get refreshed and cooled. His bones and veins became crystal-like and started to sparkle after they were filled with star power. He stood calmly to comprehend the essence of the stars. Splash! A charming, graceful shadow emerged from the lake behind him. Cecilia appeared, her wet hair draping behind her shoulder. She smiled brightly. "I've completed the preparation. When will Mia arrive?" Shuryen was sinking into his own world. A long time later, he woke up, a little absent-minded. He didn't turn around and tried to sense for a while. His brows knitted together as he retrieved his soul consciousness. He pulled himself together and said in a low-pitched voice, 2 hours at most. They have accelerated much faster. At their previous speed, Mia's team would need half a day to approach this area. However, after his recent sensing, he found that Mia's team was really close to them. Apparently, Mia's team had sped up several times. They were rushing to this area. That fast? Cecilia was astounded. Her long eyelashes twitched. She parted her lips into a seductive smile. There are so many barriers and restrictions outside the lake. If we sit by the lake like this, they will have doubts. I think we should hide. What do you suggest? Shiryan nodded and asked. He also knew that it was suspicious if they kept sitting on the rock like this when Mia came. Thus, he asked Cecilia for her opinion. You and I will get under the lake to hide. At least we have to make sure that they won't see us. They would think that we are cultivating in the lake or doing something. Cecilia's charming face flushed. Her curvy body shivered slightly, but it was almost unrecognizable. Well, we should deceive them and make them think that we don't recognize their arrival because we are too busy with our work. They will buy it and slowly creep in. Shiryan was moved. He knew that her idea wasn't bad. He nodded, okay. As he hadn't finished talking, starlight twirled around him. He moved like a beautiful meteor, drawing a marvelous curve in the air and falling into the center of the lake where Cecilia was floating. Seeing Shiryan flying over, Cecilia's mesmerizing eyes glinted with joy. Her graceful body swayed a little. A massive bubble arose under her body and covered her entirely. Her jade-like hand made a cut and the bubble had a narrow slit. She waved her hand. Get in. This transparent bubble wasn't very different from the invisible light cage that Shiryan had. It was spacious if Cecilia stood alone, but if Shiryan got in, it would be a little tight. Shiryan couldn't help but frown. There are layers of restrictions down there. If you dive alone and touch them, you will waste my labor of preparing them. Cecilia understood his hesitation. She chuckled. What are you afraid of? I won't bite. Moreover, you used to tell me that I have to stay close to you. I'm doing what I'm told. Shiryan didn't say more. He swayed through the narrow slit of the bubble, standing shoulder by shoulder with Cecilia inside the bubble. This 5-colored, glinting, transparent bubble was half an air balloon. The two of them stood inside it while it slowly sank to the bottom of the lake. The water surface closed above their heads. This bubble had a fresh scent of water and the sweet aroma from Cecilia's body that could make people sink into it. As the bubble lowered down, Shiryan observed his surroundings. He was frightened at first sight. After they've reached the depth of 100 meters, Shiryan saw so many transparent bubbles of various sizes. They were moving around in some trajectory, and they didn't float up to the surface. There were hundreds of them. Each bubble contained fierce energy fluctuations. Those energy fluctuations had resonated with the water in the lake. When the bubble moved, they could hide their energy fluctuations. If Shiryan wasn't underwater, he wouldn't be able to find these strange commotions. He couldn't help but release his soul consciousness to observe more. Discolored, Shiryan took a deep breath. He turned to Cecilia and said, I think I can't run away if you want to kill me here. The dense bubbles in the lake were like terrifying energy bombs that Cecilia controlled. If those bubbles exploded at once, the explosive power could burst off his body. His eyes drilled at Cecilia. He suddenly felt cold inwardly. He urged his powers and prepared himself. If Cecilia showed a little action, he would use the space power Upanishad to run away immediately. He would never let Cecilia control his life. Why would I have to trick you? Cecilia smiled like a blooming flower. Her beautiful eyes could sink into people's souls. She burst out laughing and said naturally, you are too vigilant. Why do you think everyone else is your enemy? Being careful isn't a bad thing. Shiryan's face was still severe. His nerves were tense as he had always put up guard. Chapter 11:27, Stealth. Chapter 11:27, Stealth, _. The bright lake twinkled like a fish scale under the light of the star that was really clear and beautiful. Hundreds of meters under the water surface contained so many bubbles in different sizes. Each bubble carried tremendous energy fluctuations that could destroy even the sky or incipient god realm warrior. Inside one of those transparent bubbles were two shadows. The distance between them was around 10 centimeters. It felt like they could even hear each other's breathing. A pure fragrance filled the bubble and made the atmosphere romantic. Cecilia's charming face was rosy and it revealed her glamour. Her sexy, mature body looked like it could drip juice. She swayed at her spot, creating heat. However, Shiryan had nothing romantic in his mind. His eyes gazed at Cecilia with caution and strange intentions. She had proposed this ambush plan. She had the chance to stay with him in the middle of a deadly great formation under the lake. She even got him here with her. All the details matched. If someone said that Cecilia didn't have any other idea for him, Shiryan would never buy it. He could vaguely feel that Cecilia wanted to do something through him. She had made him enter the bubble and let him see the energy fluctuation inside those thick bubbles. It would be her next trick. He had already sensed that the energy compressed in those bubbles was too much. Once they exploded, besides Cecilia, the one who had arranged this formation, no other people in this lake could survive. Even Shiryan himself. What do you have in mind? The mature beauty in front of him smiled gently with her succulent red lips. Her face blushed as she released the stunning charisma that could heat up any man. Shiryan studied her as many thoughts flashing in his mind. He pulled himself together and chuckled, nothing. I just think you're too beautiful, Jia. I think I can't control myself. He didn't wait for Cecilia to say anything and he grabbed her snow-white arm in just a blink of an eye. He talked, feeling hot. Jia, your skin is so marvelous. Cecilia's skin was porcelain white and as smooth as silk. Her bright skin felt so good under his hand. He decided to take action proactively. He didn't want his life to be held in someone's hands. Whether Cecilia had lousy intentions for him or not, he had to assume it was the worst situation. If Cecilia pushed him out or left this bubble alone and activated the formation in the bottom of the lake, he couldn't escape alive. Perhaps he wouldn't have time to urge his space power Upanishad. It meant that Cecilia was holding his life. He wouldn't allow it. As he gripped Cecilia's arm, he had a physical contact with her that would prevent Cecilia from ditching him in just a blink. If Cecilia had the guts to ambush him, with this close distance, he was confident that he would smash her god body quickly. When he grabbed Cecilia by her arm, Cecilia became uncomfortable. Her beautiful eyes had a gleam of chaotic and fearful feelings. She smiled gently. Well, even if you like me, you can't behave badly to me though. While talking, Cecilia quickly raised her arm, trying to get rid of his grip. However, Shiryan still clutched her arm, his eyes hot and his face passionate. He whispered as if he was dreaming, well, in fact, when I first met you, I found that I couldn't control myself falling in love with you. Now that we're alone here, forgive me if I can't control myself anymore. Cecilia changed her countenance slightly. She cursed Shiryan under her breath for talking nonsense. However, she could only smile embarrassedly. She spoke reluctantly, get off me. We can talk. Don't touch me. I'm not going to let go of you. Shiryan put on a perverted face, but his eyes were too calm and cold. His eyes drilled into her, I really like you. The more frightened Cecilia got, the more certain Shiryan was. His other hand reached out, grabbing Cecilia's waist and pulling her into his chest. With a fragranced body touching his chest, Shiryan couldn't control the vibe in his heart. Her soft back stuck on his chest. One hand of his placed on Cecilia's smooth abdomen and it didn't have a single scar. He could feel the bouncing, firm but cheeks under his palm. He felt hot indeed. Well, we still have around 2 hours. We should do something fun to kill time. No one knows how the future will turn. If we get the chance to have fun, let's just have fun. We should enjoy life. We don't want to regret anything, right? Cecilia stood with her back to him, her face fearful and her eyes getting colder. Can you let me first? I can't, Shiryan said firmly. Cecilia felt chilled. She suddenly recognized Shiryan's purpose and the reason why he had acted strangely all of a sudden. She got it. You said you like me. Is it true? Cecilia relaxed her tense body, smiling and endlessly seducing. Her neck was red. If you like me, agree with me on one thing, will you? Tell me then. Yan's eyes were calm. He held Cecilia by one hand while the other hand was placed on her belly. It gave him a marvelous feeling. He stroked her belly and brought his mouth near her left earlobe, talking huskily. As he had a sexy woman in his arms, even if he was so cautious, his body still had a masculine reaction. His lower body got erected eventually, and he placed by Cecilia's beautiful-shaped, curvy butt. He could feel his blood boil. I want to get to the center. There's something I must have. It matters a lot to my future and my position in the family. Feeling Yan's ambiguous move, Cecilia cursed him for being despicable. She quickly pulled herself together. She didn't want her mind to be disturbed by Yan, which would lead her to make the wrong decisions. You want me to help you, eh? What can you give me in return? Yan grinned. The hand wandering around her smooth stomach slowly rose to the spot just under her ample breasts. Cecilia jolted back. She hurried to press his mischievous hand. Her smile became more begrudging. Didn't you say that you liked me? Does it require a condition to help the one you like? It doesn't sound nice, though. Well, I like a lot of people. If I've come to help every single of them, how could I reach the realm and attainment I have today? Yan sneered, and he arched his lower body so his hard shaft could be placed between her soft, plump butt cheeks. Feeling a wonderful warmth there, his desire rocketed. He thought that it was really hard to control now. This woman was so juicy and sexy. It has been a long time since he had touched a woman. If it continued this way, he wouldn't be able to help it anymore. Cecilia immediately felt that something was wrong. She halted right in front of the edge. She turned around and pushed Yan's hands, her face sober. All right, I admit that I want to ask you to help me with something. But I don't want to use my body in exchange. Please show respect. Her usual charming face disappeared. She seemed to turn into someone else who was dead serious. Yan couldn't react properly. He studied her and then gave a cold smile. You don't want to ask me for a favor. You want to force me, right? Glancing at the bubbles around, Yan spoke calmly. I'm holding you now. If you dare make any wrong move, I will kill you quickly. I won't show mercy. Cecilia changed her look. But then, she smiled again. Yeah, it's true that I've had other thoughts. But I have none at this moment. And you've used me. We will consider that nothing happened. I will let you hold my hand. We'll talk. What do you say? Well, I think that the way we've talked wasn't bad, Yan grinned evilly. Yan moved his mischievous hands. Just like Cecilia had suggested, he clamped her hand to ensure that she couldn't do anything evil to him. Then, he frowned and asked, okay, tell me. If I can help you, what will you offer me? What do you want? You. Is it possible? No. Then what can you give me? Cecilia quieted down. Her bright eyes gazed at Yan. She suddenly had a headache. Yan's smart wit and deliberation made her powerless. She knew that it wouldn't work if she wanted to ambush him. If you need a woman, how about Mia? She thought for a while and then said with bright eyes. If Mia falls into the lake, I'm sure that I can confine her. If you can bring her and escape instantly, you can do anything to her. What about this condition? If Mia or you man enters the lake, you just need to help me confine one of them. Yan said, I want to use one of them to get the 7-colored demonic flower. If I get what I want, I will consider your request. That's not good enough, shouted Cecilia. Why do I have to help you confine Mia or you man just so that you will consider my request? Why can't you just agree to my request? It's simple. I agreed to go with you guys. It's a big favor already. Otherwise, the God clan would have killed you quickly, answered Yan coldly. You don't have the right to bargain with me. You didn't have that right from the beginning. And I hate women who set me up the most. If you do it once again, I will kill you directly. Right. I may not need to do it myself. I just need to tell Wu Feng, Xia Zhao, or Mo Fo that I want you dead. They will kill you. Do you believe that or not? Hearing him, Cecilia didn't have a tinge of color on her face anymore. She looked at him in rage. She shouted, You don't talk with reason. You're the one who plotted against me first. Don't blame me. Shiryen smiled faintly and took a deep breath. All right, pull yourself together. Help me with this and I will consider your request. After that, we can talk about the conditions. Pausing for a while, he lowered his voice. Mia's team is coming. Chapter 1128, The Sudden Incident. Chapter 1128, The Sudden Incident, _ Inside the marsh, the group of warrior tried to reduce their auras and slow down their pace. They continued to move forward but moved more discreetly. Yuman was the leader. He frowned and electric beams shot out of his deep eyes as if he was trying to look further ahead of them. He looked careful. Mia and the Fernandez followed behind him. None of them looked impatient. They were all following Yuman's instructions. They all trusted him. Haig's news isn't wrong. Yuman stopped after sensing for a while. He looked at the lake far in front of them and said, "Many warriors used to gather there. They seem to have struggled against each other for a while." Yuman picked up a pinch of mud under his feet, rubbed it between his fingers, and then looked at the trees around. Those people used to walk around the place. It seems that they had arranged something. Mia was astounded. She suddenly held her porcelain's white arm high. All the members of the Fernandez family halted and stood quietly at their spots. They were vigilant, watching their surroundings. "You means they could have perhaps arranged some restrictions?" asked Mia. Yuman nodded, pointing at the ground in front of them where there were a lot of thick bushes and lush trees. He answered firmly, "From some traces, those trees have been touched. They did it secretly. Fortunately, I've been familiar with this area for years. I can see their small streaks. It's strange." Mia was bewildered. Did they know that we would pass by this area? If not, why had they set up barriers and restrictions here? I'm not sure. It was also what Yuman couldn't reason. They didn't know that Shiryen was like Haig. His soul consciousness wasn't bound by the ancient continent. He could guess the location they had to cross with the direction they were going. That was why he had asked the others to prepare this area. Maybe it's not aimed at us. Perhaps they've prepared these things for Haig or Phelps. Anyway, no matter what, we have to be careful. Mia thought and then smiled. She turned to talk to Baihao's team of 4. "You guys go and scout first." Baihao's team darkened their face at the same time. They could listen to Mia and Yuman's conversation clearly. They knew that the muddy ground, the bushes, and even the small forest in front of them had a lot of dangers that could take their lives. As Mia was afraid that her family members would get hurt, she wanted the 4 of them to be sacrificing pawns, which enraged Baihao's team. However, they didn't dare to show that. Mia's team was so domineering. They had proven that, indeed. At the same time, before they came here, their chief had asked them to obey Mia's orders. Baihao could only reluctantly agree. "Everybody be careful. The area in front of us isn't safe." He was so tense. Abruptly, his mind became clear and cautious. He urged the god power and circulated it in his body. The other 3 warriors of the Bai family followed him. They urged and accumulated energy that then turned into the phantom of a fighting eagle and the python. They stood at their spots and sent the fantasy beasts to explore the area at a slow speed. Mia's icy eyes flashed with a gleam of heartless intention. She coldly looked at Baihao's group and then turned around to signal the members of the Fernandez family to back off a little further. Several hundred meters deep in the lake, Shiryen stood inside a transparent bubble, still clutching on Cecilia's arm like they were lovers without any distance. The atmosphere between them was ambiguously romantic. However, they both looked stern as if the battle was taking place right in front of them. "So," Cecilia exhaled, her breath as tender as the scent of the orchid. Her beautiful eyes were filled with anxiety and uneasy feeling. The god power in her body was streaming around continuously. It had synchronized to the different-sized bubbles around them. The explosive energy inside those bubbles was connected to her thought. She could trigger the bubbles at any time she wanted. Those bubbles were a kind of peculiar treasures. It could gather the steam in the lake or the ocean and compress them. When she triggered them, they would burst at the same time and create a terrifying energy wave. She had fabricated those things herself, so she understood very well how tremendous they could be. She had planned to use the instant destructive power of those bubbles to damage Mia's team severely. It would give her more chances to survive. She had also proposed and carried out this ambush plan. She didn't want to see any mistake that would make people doubt her talents. Thus, she was even more anxious. It isn't really going well. Yan's face was cold and stern. He glanced at her and then closed his eyes. The flaming co-soul behind his back swayed and released the soul energy fluctuation. Cecilia was really nervous. She screamed, "What's happening?" "That man has mastered tracing skills. He seems to have found something." Mia's team has halted now. Mia has sent the Bai family's warriors to scout. Opening his eyes, Yan knitted his brows. "Does man know how to track people?" "He can read signs and streaks and connect them to figure out information." "Damn, we forgot this man." Cecilia regretted and said worriedly, "Throughout these 5 years, Mia and Phelps have depended on man's tracking skills to find us one by one. Although he doesn't have the power like the soul consciousness of the man who you've mentioned, man isn't an ordinary warrior. It seems like our plan won't go as we've estimated." Yan rubbed his chin, light flashing in his brain as he contemplated. Mofo, Xia Zhao, and Sheng Yingyu had used a lot of precious weapons and efforts to arrange those restrictions and barriers. If they can't work, they will be very upset. "I'm afraid that we don't have the chance to set up other traps." Cecilia furrowed her bold brows, her charming face filled with an anxious look. She was trying to formulate another plan. Yan suddenly let out a low-pitched scream. "Wait a minute." While Baihao's team sent their beast phantoms to scout, they were walking towards the lake. Mia stopped them all of a sudden. Everybody was surprised. They looked at her without a clue. Baihao's face was more grimaced. He forced his temper down and gave her a bad face. "Lady Mia, what else do you want us to do?" Mia chuckled and waved her hand. "Don't rush. Haig said that the man in the lake can use space power Upanishad. Once you trigger the barriers and restrictions, he can leave immediately. We can't catch him then." From man's judgment, Mia gave an assumption that she thought was correct. She assumed that Yan had set up those restrictions so he could do his business with Cecilia under the lake. When his restrictions were touched, he would be alerted immediately and he could use his space power Upanishad to flee. With such an assumption, Mia didn't want Baihao's team's activity to alert the others. She calmed down and said to Man, "We should have a better plan. We should disorganize the space around here so he can't use his space power Upanishad to escape. We still have time to plan while he knows nothing about. It should be more than one solution." Man smiled sinisterly. "For example, we can stir up the earth and heaven energy here like a storm. It could create magnetic energy storms that shatter space. Another plan is..." Man contemplated and smiled coldly. He was giving plans to Mia while Mia earnestly listened to him with nods. At the bottom of the lake. "How is it?" Cecilia was about to crack from seeing Yan's strange reaction. Her mesmerizing face was dark. "Something even worse." Yan forced a smile. "You got it." Cecilia covered her mouth and hissed. "They know we're under the lake. They also know our identities. They're going to stir up the space here so I can't use the space power Upanishad to run away." Squinting, he sensed and said, "Every space has critical points. When they are shattered or blocked, warriors who cultivate space power Upanishad can't use them to run away. They are trying to seal those critical nodes as they thought that I don't know what they are doing. After that, they can catch us like fish in a fish tank." Listening to him, Cecilia discolored and screamed, "If our plan can't work well, we don't need to stay here. We should go now." If all of your bubbles in this lake explode at the same time to create a blasting destruction, how many people can it kill?" asked Shiryan all of a sudden. "Even if the first guy of incipient God Realm expert comes here, he will die." Cecilia was confident, but then she changed into a depressed mood right after that. "What's good with it now, though? If we have to pay the big price that's our deaths, it isn't worth it. We should go before they finish that. If we linger, something bad will happen to us." "Well, we can play a little bit." Shiryan took a deep breath, his face grave. "They don't know how savage our outer barriers are, and they also don't know the formation you've arranged here. They thought that the barriers we've set up are to alert us. How to play? If we fail and you can't take me out of here, isn't it different from dying under the lake? Cecilia continued to shake her head, her face fearful. I think it's not worth our lives. Whether it's worth or not, I'll decide. You just need to listen to me. Shiryen suddenly smiled and gripped Cecilia's arm, talking to her in a stiff voice. Don't worry. Even if they can confine the space, they can do it only in a small area. As long as we storm out, I can leave with you immediately. Cecilia paled. Looking at his cold face, she felt so chilled. She cursed him under her breath for his boldness. Shiryen gripped her for a while and then released her. While Cecilia was confused, Shiryen grinned. They've successfully finished. If you kill me now, you will die later. No doubt. And you will reveal your secret under this lake. I think you're not that stupid. Cecilia stared at him for a while, her beautiful face filled with reluctance. As the situation had come to this, she pulled herself together and rolled her eyes at Shiryen. Forget it. I will play with you for a while. I hope we will survive. Don't worry. We will survive, said Shiryen earnestly. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.